Chapter 6:17. Yun Tianyu even managed to deduce something from this incident. Mu Yaja had never laid a finger on Mu Wanru. Yun Tianyu's heart was instantly satisfied. If Mu Yaja really gave him a half-brother or sister, he would not acknowledge it. Li Hanlin could not help but raise his eyebrows in amazement at Yun Tianyu's wit and intelligence. "Director Yun, if you didn't mention it, I would have thought that your daddy had impregnated her." Yu glanced at him contemptuously and mocked him mercilessly. "Agent Li, do you think I'm like you? Do you have a low IQ?" Li Hanlin felt aggrieved by Yu's contemptuous gaze. Did he have to be so black-bellied? Did he have to be so sharp-tongued? He even mocked him for having a low IQ. Li Hanlin's face was filled with grief and indignation. "I'm bitter inside, but I won't say it out loud. If I say it out loud, my bonus will be deducted." Li Hanlin pursed his lips in puzzlement. "Since the child in Mu Wanru's stomach isn't Mu Yaja's, then whose is it?" "It's definitely not yours," Yun Tianyu replied abruptly. Li Hanlin was at a loss for words. "I know it's definitely not mine." "That's an interesting question." Yu gave him a sidelong glance expressionlessly. "You're asking me whose child it is, how would I know? Do you think I'm a god?" Li Hanlin clapped his hands in glee. It seemed that this child was not a god. He did not know everything, after all. This time, it was his turn to be satisfied. "Director Yun, your mommy is filming. Don't you need to visit her?" Li Hanlin suddenly asked. "No need. My mommy's scenes are all-night scenes, it must be tough on her. When she's done with the night scenes, I'll definitely nourish her well." As Yu spoke, he started to organize a diet in his mind. He planned to nourish Yun Shishir's body with more food when she returned home. Li Hanlin was so envious that he was about to die. Aya, why didn't he have such a filial son? Well, he didn't even have a wife. In the future, when she had children, she must use Yun Tianyu as a benchmark. She would educate her children on the path of 24 filial piety from a young age and raise them into a smart and filial son like Yun Tianyu. "Boss, based on the analysis from multiple angles, Miss Yun is jealous of you." In the CEO's office of Disheng Financial Group, Min Yu raised his head from the thick stack of psychology books on his desk. He adjusted his glasses and spoke seriously. Mu Yaja leaned back in his office chair with a thoughtful look on his face. Then, he stared at him suspiciously. "Really? Probably." Min Yu immediately explained. "That's what the book says. Read it out, I want to hear it." Mu Yaja immediately ordered. Min Yu nodded his head and said, "No matter if it's a man or a woman, when they see their partner interacting with someone of the opposite sex, they will always feel uncomfortable. In psychology, it's called jealousy. Continue." Mu Yaja nodded and ordered him to continue reading. Chapter 6:18. He needs constant proof of his love. The thought of a possible love rival will arouse strong suspicion and accusations from him, a selfish person. This kind of baseless attack will make him feel wronged and tired at first. Later on, it will become an insult and unbearable. Mu Yaja was stunned. Why did Min Yu's behavior and symptoms seem to be more similar to his? Could it be that when he saw Gu Xingzi kissing her that day, he flew into a rage because he was jealous? But when he saw his woman with another woman, shouldn't it be natural for him to be angry? Mu Yaja suddenly leaned forward slightly and clasped his hands together. He frowned and said, "Min Yu." "Yes, boss." Mu Yaja asked hesitantly, "Is it normal for a man to be jealous of a woman?" Min Yu was taken aback. He immediately lowered his head and flipped through the pages of the book with his fingers. Mu Yaja was shocked by the speed of his hands. Min Yu immediately flipped to the table of contents and read it to him with great emotion. "Love without jealousy doesn't exist. Vinegar is not just a condiment in love. It's even a nutrient. The intensity of the vinegar is often proportional to the intensity of the love. So, looking back at the past and thinking about the present, if you're never jealous in a relationship, isn't this so-called love very suspicious? Practice is the only standard to test the truth. Jealousy is one of the standards to test whether true love is fake. In other words, when a person is jealous of another person, it's because he loves her and cares about her. Wuxia organized the paragraph into a sentence of truth. Min Yu nodded hesitantly and said, "That's roughly what it means." Wuxia frowned. He lowered his eyes and seemed to be deep in thought. Suddenly, he raised his eyes and looked at Min Yu in confusion. The latter's shoulders trembled as he stared at her. "Min Yu? Go ahead, boss. Have you ever been in love?" "No." Min Yu was touched on his sore spot. He immediately shook his head pitifully. "You've never been in love before?" Wuxia glanced at him from head to toe with some disdain. He actually hired someone who had never been in a relationship to be his love psychology teacher? Min Yu retorted, "Boss, I haven't even earned enough money to get married. How would I dare to fall in love?" Wuxia raised his eyebrows in displeasure and glared at him coldly. He rapped his knuckles on the table. "If you want a raise, just say it." Min Yu replied honestly, "Boss, I want a raise." Wuxia ignored him. Rejected. Min Yu looked as if he had nothing to live for. Wuxia ignored the resentment emanating from him and continued to ask, "What does it mean for a woman to be jealous of a man?" Unwillingly, Min Yu lowered his head and flipped through the book. Then, he read it out one by one. "When a woman is jealous, she will ignore you." Wuxia nodded. Just a few days after he left the country, this woman had blacklisted his number. "Secondly, she will be cold to you." Wuxia nodded again. This woman was really damn cold to him. She gave him the cold shoulder. Could it be that she was jealous of him? Thirdly, she will lose her temper easily. 90% of women will lose their temper. Chapter 6:19. The fourth rule is that you will mock and ridicule without revealing your true feelings. That seemed to be the case. She'll compare herself to that woman. Wuxia rubbed his chin thoughtfully. Yunshirshi's words echoed in his ears again. "You said that every part of my body belongs to you. What about you? Who do you belong to?" Muwanru. She'll appear depressed, accompanied by sad crying, and unable to recover from the setback. Min Yu listed out the reactions of women to jealousy one by one. Even if he didn't list all of them, most of them matched. Could it be that the woman had blacklisted him, treated him coldly and alienated him, secretly mocked and ridiculed him, and even compared him to other women? These were all reactions of jealousy. Wuxia naturally put it into the equation: jealousy equals love. Did that mean that this woman was jealous because she liked him? Wuxia couldn't help but smile at this realization. The coldness in his eyes gradually eased, and there was a hint of joy. Min Yu raised his head and looked at the excitement and complacency on his boss's face in shock. Under his gaze, Wuxia came back to his senses. However, when he saw Min Yu staring at him so blatantly, he immediately stopped smiling, cleared his throat, and glared at Min Yu unhappily. "Continue reading your book." Min Yu immediately calmed down and didn't dare to look at him again. You have to be good at controlling your emotions and respecting the other party's feelings. You have to know that she's not your private property. "She's my private property." Wuxia corrected him unhappily. "She has the right to be with others, and even to love others." Wuxia immediately interrupted him with a cold look in his eyes. "She has no right to be with men other than me, and she has no right to love other men." The strong and dangerous aura emanating from him shocked Min Yu so much that he didn't dare to speak for a long time. "Min Yu. Boss, is this book authentic?" Wuxia questioned. How can there be such a ridiculous statement? "Yeah." Min Yu flipped to the next page and added, it also says that although being jealous is a sign of liking someone, it's still far from true love. If you're jealous, there's only one way out: to use love to get love back. Using love to obtain love? Wuxia couldn't help but fall into deep thought as he leaned back in his chair with an unreadable expression on his face. Do women have a deep obsession with marriage? What do women usually think about marriage? Minyu shook his head blankly. I don't know. He also wanted to answer this question. It was a pity that he didn't even have a girlfriend. Wuxia glared at him. If you don't know, then why aren't you investigating? Minyu immediately took out a book titled The Psychology of Marriage and started reading it silently. It's easy to fall in love, but it's hard to get along with each other. The biggest difference between marriage and love is that love is based on the other party's strengths, while marriage is based on the other party's weaknesses. In marriage and love, communication is often a big problem, and this is often caused by the difference in perception of love between men and women. Wuxia nodded thoughtfully. Chapter 620. Is that so? Wuxia mumbled doubtfully. Minyu replied, well. A woman's heart is like a needle at the bottom of the ocean. I don't really understand. Wuxia replied, marriage is just a piece of paper. Do women actually see it as a sense of security? He really couldn't understand what women were thinking. Wuxia was a little confused. Can't you get a divorce after you get married? Minyu thought about it seriously for a while and said, I think that women yearn for marriage not only because of the sense of security that a piece of paper can give them, but also because they yearn for their man's love to become a legitimate thing. Wuxia gently rubbed the thumb ring on his finger. His eyes were filled with thoughts, but he didn't say anything. Boss, do you not know how to coax a woman? Minyu winked slyly. Let me give you a suggestion. Let's hear it. Minyu immediately leaned over and whispered in his ear. Wuxia looked at him suspiciously. Will it work? Yes. It will definitely work. Women like romantic things. Wuxia glanced at him and pursed his lips. Go and arrange it. Okay. Xianxia Villa District. Xianxia locked herself in her bedroom. She couldn't go anywhere for an entire day. She wanted to go home, but a servant stopped her at the door. Xianxia Villa was located in a piece of land with good feng shui in the suburbs. It was far away from the hustle and bustle of the world. The scenery was picturesque and beautiful. When she walked out of the entrance, she could see a winding mountain road in the distance. It stretched for thousands of miles. Because it was a private villa area, there were basically no public transport routes or taxis. If she insisted on leaving, she would have to walk down the mountain to have a chance of getting a taxi. Xianxia was extremely frustrated. Wuxia. What was this man thinking? Why did he leave her alone in the villa and disappear without a trace? What was he doing? In the afternoon, Yu called to ask if the filming was going well. Of course, Xianxia couldn't tell her that she wasn't on set anymore. Originally, she was supposed to have a scene today, but after Wuxia's nonsense last night, she didn't know what the crew would think of her. What did Lin Fengtian think of her? She tried to summon up the courage to call Lin Fengtian and apologize. Because of her personal reasons, she had affected the normal progress of the crew. She felt very guilty about it. Especially Wuxia, who had pushed Lin Fengtian to the ground so roughly. He must have been injured. Where is Gu Xingzi? He should be injured as well, right? He was afraid that because of this, the progress of the production could only be temporarily delayed. Thinking of this, Xianxia felt guilty. In his heart, he hated Wuxia for being so unreasonable. In the evening, there was a knock on the bedroom door. Xianxia covered herself with the blanket and didn't want to bother with it. The knocking continued for a long time. Suddenly, the butler's polite voice came from the door. Miss Yun, are you asleep? I'm asleep. Xianxia replied in annoyance. There was another silence outside the door. Then, there was the soft sound of keys. Xianxia was shocked. She immediately sat up from the bed, put on her slippers and walked to the door. However, the door that was originally locked was open from the outside. She couldn't help but feel a little angry. Didn't I say that I was asleep? Chapter 621. Xianxia was startled. You want to send me home? Yes. The butler explained, the president just called and asked us to send you home. Xianxia's face froze. She didn't know why, but when she found out that it was this man who asked the butler to send her home, she felt a little disappointed. However, it quickly dissipated. He said he wanted to send me home? Yes. The butler said and carefully handed over a small dress. The president sent someone to give this to you. If you don't mind, we'll help you change into it. What is this? Xianxia's gaze fell on the small black dress. It was a Chanel haute couture dress. It was elegant and beautiful, and one could tell that it was worth a lot. It wasn't for formal banquets, but more like the small dresses worn by socialites in high society. It was simple, but it didn't lose its elegance. She couldn't help but frown. I don't want it. She didn't want to wear the clothes he gave her. When the butler heard this, a panicked look appeared on his face. Miss Yun, this is a little gift from the president. He repeatedly told us to help you change into it, otherwise. Miss Yun, please don't make it difficult for us. Xianxia said in a huff, I don't want it. Tell him I don't like it. You don't like this style? The butler asked respectfully. This was a style personally chosen by the president. When they saw it, they also felt that Xianxia would look good in it. I don't like this style. Xianxia said coldly. The president didn't just send this one. If Miss Yun doesn't like it, there are a few more styles for you to choose from. With that, the butler immediately called out and a row of fashion clerks in high-class uniforms rushed in. They spread out in front of her, each holding a set of high-class clothes of different styles for her to choose from. Didn't you say you were going to send me home? Why did you make me change into this for a trial? Where's Wuxia? What is he trying to do? Xianxia couldn't help but feel annoyed. She didn't know what he was trying to do. Everyone looked at each other and shook their heads in confusion. The president only told us to help you change into the dress and send you to the car. The car is already waiting for you outside. Upon hearing this, Xianxia immediately walked to the floor-to-ceiling window and lifted the curtains. When she saw a luxurious limousine parked outside the courtyard, she was momentarily baffled. She really could not fathom the man's intention. However, she turned around and looked at the troubled faces behind her. She suddenly sighed and pointed at the black dress and said, Forget it, I won't make things difficult for you. Just this one, I will change into it myself. The servant's face immediately lit up with joy. She left the dress in the room and retreated out of the door. Xianxia changed into the gown and looked at the mirror. The black gown on her made her look even more elegant and slender. It also accentuated her snow-white skin. Her black hair, which was as beautiful as brocade, slanted from her shoulders to her waist. She exuded the aura of a socialite. As soon as she opened the door, the stylists waiting at the door immediately surrounded her. Hair, makeup, jewelry, and high heels were undoubtedly a huge project. Xianxia felt that something was wrong. What are you trying to do? The stylists were also confused and shook their heads. Chapter 622. The Bentley slowly parked in the parking lot of Huxin Island. Huxin Island was artificially developed 2 years ago, and now it had become a landmark in the capital. And this restaurant was located on Huxin Island. It could be said to have a picturesque view. Bali Western Restaurant. It was the best Western restaurant for couples in the capital. It was very romantic. It was said that this Western restaurant only served one pair of couples a week. It was rumored that this was the most expensive restaurant in the capital. Whether it was the dishes or the fine wine, they were all extremely luxurious. Therefore, it was widely rumored that Bali's couple's set meal was worth tens of millions. Yunshurshu initially found it unbelievable when she heard about it. How could anyone be stupid enough to spend 10 million on a Western meal? However, when she got out of the car, she was surprised to see a gorgeous cruise ship docked by the shore. It was so beautiful. It was already night time. The entire island was covered in colorful lights. It was extremely romantic. The night breeze blew a burst of floral fragrance. The flowers on the shore bloomed like a magnificent carpet. The sky was filled with bright stars. The lake was decorated with starlight and starlights. The scenery was breathtaking. Yunshurshu couldn't help but be deeply attracted by the romantic scenery. She walked along the lakeside. The fragrance of flowers, the night view, and the starlights made her fall into a trance. When she came back to her senses, the car had already driven away. What did he mean? Why did he leave her here alone? Yunshurshu's heart skipped a beat. Looking around, she saw a harbor not far away. The night view of Hushin Island was very beautiful. Not only that, there was also a port by the lake, equipped with a cruise ship. After boarding the cruise ship, one could travel around Hushin Island. However, the ticket price was not cheap, but it attracted many people. Therefore, there was a long line at the port. Many people were waiting to board the cruise ship to enjoy the beautiful night view. Yunshurshu was obviously confused. She didn't know what Wuxia was doing. He let her wear such a gown and left her here alone. She didn't know how to get back to the city from here. She should be able to get a bus here, but she didn't have anything on her. She didn't bring her phone or wallet. He couldn't help but feel a little depressed. Seeing that there were people at the harbor, she thought to ask for directions and see if there was any way to return to the city. Thus, Yunshurshu walked towards the harbor. Just now, she was walking in a hurry and didn't pay attention. When she brushed past a woman, she accidentally knocked the woman's phone to the ground. Yunshurshu was stunned. She quickly apologized and lowered her head to pick up the phone. The woman said impatiently, "TSK. What's wrong with you? Don't you need to watch where you're going? Seriously." Yunshurshu frowned slightly, but she didn't want to argue with this passerby. She picked up her phone, but when she raised her head to look at the woman, she was slightly stunned. It's her. The woman she bumped into was none other than Song Enya, whom she had bumped into at the hospital that day. How did he meet her here? Yunshurshu froze on the spot, a trace of doubt and surprise appearing on her face. This was too much of a coincidence. Song Enya had originally come to Hushin Island with her friends to take a cruise ship to enjoy the night view around the island. She bought a ticket, but she still had to wait in line, so she decided to go along the lake to enjoy the night view. Chapter 623. She was used to being spoiled, so she was about to flare up when she saw the person looking up. It was Yunshurshu. She was shocked for a moment, and then suspicion appeared on her face. Without a doubt, she recognized the woman in front of her at a glance. That day, the screen displayed on Wuxia's phone was this woman's sleeping face. Yunshurshu was very beautiful. She was different from those female celebrities in the entertainment industry who had walked out of the plastic surgery production line. Be it her facial features or temperament, she was very recognizable. Song Enya had a photographic memory after seeing that photo once. Unlike the sleeping face in the photo, she was now wearing an elegant black dress with delicate and clear light makeup on her face. Compared to the sleeping face in the photo, she had a more unique charm. She was more beautiful in person than in the photo. This was a fact that she was unwilling to admit. It was no wonder that Brother Mu seemed to dote on her. A woman like her was indeed the type that men would fall in love with. Her face was elegant and her temperament was otherworldly. If she were a man, she would be tempted as well. Why was she here, though? Yun Shishir felt a little strange when she saw Song Enya staring at her in shock. Naturally, she did not know that Song Enya had seen her photo on Mu Yaja's phone. She thought that Song Enya was angry at her for bumping into her, so she quickly handed the phone back to her. "Sorry, I was careless just now. Take a look and see if the phone is damaged." Song Enya took the phone from her hand and lowered her head to take a look. There was no damage to the phone. Seeing that the phone was not damaged, Yun Shishir turned to leave. However, Song Enya called out to her. "Yun Shishir." She called out her name directly. Yun Shishir was stunned and turned around in confusion. How did this woman know her name? She hadn't officially met her, had she? I didn't recognize the wrong person, did I? Song Enya raised her chin proudly and walked slowly toward her. "Is this your name?" She had a habit of checking Weibo. That day, the production team of The Green Apple posted a set photo on Weibo, and it quickly became a trending topic. She clicked on it and saw that it was her. At the same time, she knew her name. Yun Shishir. She remembered that the villa developed by the Mu family was called Yun Xianxia. Was it just a coincidence? Or did Brother Mu purposely name it after this woman? Song Enya followed the Weibo account of the production team of The Green Apple. Ever since the start of filming, Yun Shishir's behind-the-scenes photos had the highest exposure rate. It was obvious that this woman was not ordinary. "Yes, Yun Shishir is my name." "You are." Yun Shishir looked at her and politely asked for her name. "You don't deserve to know my name." Song Enya crossed her arms and retorted haughtily. When Yun Shishir heard this, the polite smile on her face immediately turned cold. This woman was really arrogant. She curled her lips and smiled. "It's fine. I don't care anyway." It was as if she really wanted to know. She couldn't be bothered to lower herself to her level. Song Enya choked on her words. Is there anything else?" Yun Shishir smiled gracefully. "If there's nothing else, I'll leave first." "Stop right there." Seeing that she was about to leave, Song Enya gritted her teeth and stomped her feet in jealousy. She chased after her and grabbed her shoulders. Chapter 624. "What are you doing?" Yun Shishir was furious as well. She shook off her grip abruptly, feeling that the other was being ridiculous. Why was she glaring at her as if she wanted to swallow her whole? Song Enya sneered and retorted, "Did I say you could leave? That's strange. Who are you? Why should I listen to you?" Yun Shishir was baffled. "Are you crazy?" "Ha!" Song Enya was so angry that she laughed. Crossing her arms over her chest, she glared fiercely at her. "Yun Shishir, why don't you take a good look at your status? How dare you talk to me like that with your lowly status?" "Miss, what does my status have to do with you? You're so arrogant that I thought you were a princess from some royal family. Judging from your upbringing, you don't seem to have been educated in etiquette," Yun Shishir retorted mercilessly, leaving Song Enya at a loss for words. She did not expect Yun Shishir to be so sharp-tongued despite her frail and harmless appearance. Song Enya pursed her lips coldly and suddenly took a step closer to her. Her pair of sinister eyes scanned her from head to toe before she laughed. "I think you're just a so-so. At most, you're a little more seductive on the surface. I'm afraid you're really cheap deep down. Who do you think you are? Do you think you're a socialite from the upper class just because you're wearing a gown? Dream on. A commoner will always be a commoner. Don't even think about marrying into the rich." Yun Shishir was stunned. She was confused by the other's sarcasm. She did not know how she had offended this missy for her to be so hurtful. Song Enya continued, "In this day and age, you're so righteous about being a third party in someone else's marriage? You've really opened my eyes. I don't know what you're talking about." "You do." Song Enya grabbed her wrist and spat viciously. B*tch, you like to seduce men, don't you? You clearly know that Brother Mu has a fiancé, yet you're still shamelessly sticking to him. Don't you have any shame? What did you say? Yun Shishir angrily shook off her hand, but she stopped abruptly in the middle of her sentence. Belatedly, he realized who the Brother Mu she was talking about was. He also understood the hidden meaning behind her words. Mu Yaja, how could she have forgotten that this woman was Mu Yaja's cousin? But how did she know about him? Could it be that Mu Yaja mentioned it to her? What did he say to her? Yun Shishir's expression was a little ugly. Let me give you a piece of advice. As a woman, it's best to be thick-skinned. Brother Mu already has a fiancé, so you'd better stay away from him. If Grandpa Mu finds out that you've interfered in Brother Mu's marriage, he won't let you off. Song Enya's face was filled with disgust. The contempt in her eyes was so scorching that it could burn her skin. Although Yun Shishir was angry, she still looked up to meet her cold and disdainful gaze. She had no intention of backing down. She kept looking at Song Enya's face and saw a hint of jealousy and hatred on her face. There was almost no need to hide her jealousy. Is she jealous? Usually, when a woman shows such a vicious and jealous expression, that man must be very important in her heart. Chapter 625. She likes him? Yun Shishir pursed her lips. She still could not forget the scene she saw at the hospital previously. She used him and longed for his love for her. The expression on her face was not that of a sister's dependence on her brother. It was possessiveness. Desire. An attachment that could not be obtained. There was no doubt that Song Enya liked Mu Yaja. It was just that, more or less, it was not appropriate for her to be so obvious. However, at least in her heart, her feelings for her cousin, Mu Yaja, were not that simple. Yun Shishir somewhat understood. On the surface, she was insulting her as a third party. In reality, how could Song Enya not yearn to stand beside Mu Yaja as a woman? And not as a cousin? After understanding it, Yun Shishir smiled and slowly said, I think you're wrong about something. What? Song Enya was stunned. I'm not a third party who interfered in his marriage. Yun Shishir raised her eyebrows and an elegant yet cold smile appeared on her face. Mu Yaja has a fiancé, but it's just an engagement. Is he married? I don't think so. Where did the saying of interfering in a marriage come from? But Brother Mu and Mu Wanru are already engaged. Song Enya almost blurted out in anger. However, Yun Shishir noticed her choice of words. Mu Wanru. She called out her name almost without thinking. Presumably, this woman's heart was extremely unbalanced by the fact that Mu Wanru was Mu Yaja's fiancé. Yun Shishir smiled. So what? It's just an engagement. It's a marriage arranged by the family. There's no love or feelings between the two. Interfered? Huh. Song Enya was completely enraged by her sneer. Therefore, she sneered without thinking. Huh. Aren't you a little too naive? Do you really think that Brother Mu likes you sincerely? She's just toying with you. Do you really think that you can rise to the top and marry into a rich family in a dignified manner? The Mu family was the richest family in the capital. How could Grandpa Mu allow an actress to marry into the Mu family? If you want to climb up the social ladder of the Mu family, go back and buy a pillow. Even your dreams are more realistic than this. His words were, without a doubt, mocking Yun Shishir for daydreaming. The blatant mockery was like a needle dipped in salt, fiercely piercing into his heart, causing him incomparable pain. Yun Shishir felt a stab of pain in her heart, but she still maintained an elegant smile on her face and asked, so what? You. Song Enya exclaimed in exasperation when she saw how shameless the other was. You're shameless. Actually, you're right. Yun Shishir pouted innocently. She had a helpless expression on her face, as if she had been seen through. I want to be promoted. I'm here to snatch your brother Mu Wanru's fiancé. I'm the third party. But... After a pause, Yun Shusher raised her eyes and glared at her coldly. What can you do to me? You. Song Enya raised her hand, wanting to slap the other's face in anger. Yun Shusher raised her hand and held it tightly. She exerted so much force that a deep red mark was almost left on the other's fair wrist. She looked as if she was boneless and weak, but Song Enya did not expect her to be so strong. Chapter 626. What's the matter? You can't win an argument, so you want to get physical? What a missy's temper. Yun Shusher suddenly flung her hand away. Caught off guard, Song Enya lost her balance and fell to the ground. Huh, interesting. You're Mu Yaja's cousin, aren't you? As soon as she finished speaking, Yun Shusher casually walked over and looked down at her condescendingly. She leisurely asked, why? You can't hide the jealousy on your face, can you? Don't tell me that you like Mu Yaja. Her voice was casual, but there was a strong sense of sarcasm in it. Yun Shusher's rhetorical question made Song Enya's face turn ghastly pale in an instant. There was no doubt that women understood each other. Men could not tell. Mu Yaja could not tell. However, it did not mean that Yun Shusher could not tell. This Song Enya obviously had feelings for Mu Yaja. There was no way to hide her feelings. Yun Shusher could tell at a glance. Especially at this moment, Song Enya's flustered and ashamed expression was obvious. So that was really the case. Yun Shusher shook her head and sighed. So that's how it is. You've fallen for your cousin. Is it any of your business? Song Enya raised her head and said angrily. At this moment, she had fallen to the ground, and Yun Shusher was talking to her condescendingly. Her aura instantly diminished. Hence, she immediately tried to get up from the ground. Yun Shusher stretched out her leg and stepped on her hand with her sharp high heel. Song Enya screamed and retracted her hand with a pained expression. She glared at her with a pale face. You're so pitiful. Yun Shusher mocked expressionlessly, one cousin, the other cousin. Close relatives. This is incest. It's truly shocking. You, Song Enya was so angry at her words that her face turned red and white and instantly darkened. Look, you've fallen in love with a man, but this man is your cousin. You can't be together in this lifetime. What is it if not pitiful? She then added unhurriedly, I'm different from you, though. I even have a child with him. As soon as she finished speaking, Song Enya was so shocked that her face turned pale and she stared at her in disbelief. Yun Shusher was in a good mood as she admired the other's pale and colorless face. She asked airily, what about you? What about you? Cousins, close relatives, being together is against the rules of ethics. Song Enya was momentarily stunned. She stared fixedly at Yun Shusher's face before regaining her senses. Her eyebrows and the outline of her lips. Twos, Xiao Yichen's eyebrows. At first, she did not pay attention to it, so she did not realize this. Now that she saw it, she was shocked. Could it be, Xiao Yichen is Mu Yaja's child? This realization almost hit Song Enya to hell, and she was instantly buried in a sea of fire. Who's the wishful thinking and daydreaming? Do you think you can be with the man you love without me? Yun Shusher sneered as if mocking her naivety. That's what's really laughable. Shut up. Shut up. You shut up. Song Enya screamed and covered her ears, not wanting to hear her mockery. Chapter 627. Song Enya's heart skipped a beat when she heard that. She raised her head, feeling suffocated, and met Yun Shusher's cold gaze. He said that he only treats you as a younger sister. If I take it to heart, he'll keep a distance from you and even cut off all contact with you. That one sentence sent Song Enya to hell mercilessly. At that moment, even her heart seemed to have stopped beating. Tears burst out of her eyes and rolled down her cheeks. She clenched her teeth tightly, unwilling to look up and let Xianxia see her sorry state. She could only choke on her sobs. "You're lying. You're lying. Brother Mu loves me the most. He would never lie to me because of you. If you don't believe me, you can ask him." Xianxia was not lying. This was what Mu Yaja said himself back then. She was just repeating what he said. Xianxia pursed her lips as she recalled how Song Enya had acted all high and mighty in front of her earlier. The thought of it infuriated her. Now that she knew that Mu Yaja only treated her as a younger sister, she could not take the blow and broke down. She was just a vase and very delicate. In fact, she was also a woman who held grudges. One was not a gentleman if one did not take revenge. Therefore, she planned to add another stab to Song Enya's bloody wound. "It seems that you don't have much weight in his heart. He actually cut off all contact with his cousin because of a woman you said was just a game. I've really let you down for being so devoted to him." Song Enya screamed at her uncontrollably, "Shut up. You be *tch." With that, she pounced on Xianxia from the ground with bared fangs and brandished claws. That shrewish posture made it seem as if she wanted to strangle her to death. At this moment, Song Enya had already lost her rationality after being provoked by Xianxia's words. All she wanted was to teach this *tch a lesson. Xianxia, however, did not even bother to look at her. With a slight movement of her body, she hooked Song Enya with the tip of her foot. In her fury, the Missy did not see the tripper clearly and tripped unsuspectingly, falling face first into the mud. The cement floor was filled with jagged gravel. Song Enya, who was wearing a short skirt, scraped the skin on her knees from the fall, causing numerous bloody spots to appear on them. Her palms were also scraped, and streaks of blood seeped out. She was in a sorry state. Song Enya lowered her head to take a look at the gruesome abrasions on her knees. In the Song family, she had always been a princess who had been doted on since she was young. Before Song and she was born, she was the only one, the Song. Her father, mother, doted on her, an elder brother, she, had never suffered any grievances. Even after Song and she's birth, Papa Song and Mama Song's love for her did not diminish at all. Her spoiled Song Enya, and Song Enya's. Being pampered like this, Song Enya was really spoiled like a princess. Her body was as flawless as white jade. She had always been vain and would not let herself get hurt. Now, when she lowered her head and saw the terrible injuries on her knees, she glared at Xianxia and screamed, "Xianxia! You be *tch, shameless." Tears rolled down and wet her face. Song Enya's meticulously applied makeup was ruined by her tears. Chapter 628. In short, she was scheming and elegant. Song Enya was momentarily stunned when she heard that. Her eyes widened as she sized up the woman before her in disbelief. Her heart skipped a beat, and she gritted her teeth hard. "You be *tch, smack." Xianxia raised her hand and gave her a tight slap. Song Enya's face was slapped to the side. Her eyes widened in disbelief as she held her stinging cheek in disbelief. She had been slapped by someone. Xianxia looked down at her coldly and sneered. "Didn't your parents teach you any manners? Xianxia, how dare you hit me?" Song Enya was so angry that her eyes turned red. Smack! Xianxia smiled and gave her another slap. This time, Song Enya was completely stunned. "I'll let you see if I dare to hit you or not." Xianxia straightened her clothes expressionlessly. Song Enya was about to flare up when she saw her elegantly turn around and leave. "Xianxia! Stop right there." Song Enya gritted her teeth and got up from the ground to chase after her. A hint of impatience appeared on Xianxia's face. This Song Enya really doesn't know pain until she suffers. While the two were arguing, a waiter, who had been waiting at the port for a long time, saw the scene and locked his gaze on Yunshushi. Seeing her black off-the-shoulder gown, silky hair, and exquisite makeup, he knew that she must be tonight's VIP guest. Hence, he hurried forward and interrupted Song Enya's unreasonable tantrum. "Hello. May I ask if you're Madame Yunshushi?" Yunshushi turned around and saw the man in his uniform. He looked dignified and polite, so she smiled at him. "Hello, I am. May I know who you are?" "Madam Yun, I'm the manager of Bali Restaurant. You're tonight's VIP guest, so I'm here to pick you up for dinner." Yunshushi was stunned. Song Enya, who was behind her, was also stunned. Bali Restaurant? Even Song Enya was shocked by this. Did Yunshushi come here to keep an appointment? In Bali, a set meal for couples was worth 13 million. Even in the whole of Beijing, this was a sky-high price. Bali was a Western restaurant that was rumored to be extremely dreamy. It was said that the dishes included 8 delicacies, accompanied by aged wine. From the small dishes to the large decorations, all of them were noble and exquisite. It was said that before the meal, they would take a 30-minute helicopter ride overlooking the beautiful scenery of Hushin Island. During the meal, they would also receive 10,000 roses. Just this alone was enough to make many women scramble for him. Being able to go on a date in Bali had become a symbol of supremacy. Who exactly was Yunshushi meeting? Her heart skipped a beat. Could it be Brother Mu? Yunshushi was also a little surprised. However, she had already guessed who had arranged all of this. She cast a sidelong glance at Song Enya from the corner of her eye before turning to the senior waiter with a polite smile. "All right, I'll follow you." "Wait." Song Enya called out to her with a livid face. Are you on a date with Brother Mu?" Yunshushi turned around and looked at her expressionlessly. Date? Would Mu Yaja go on a date with her? She couldn't imagine that he would spend so much time on dates. Therefore, she was not sure if Mu Yaja was planning to go on a date with her. However, when she saw Song Enya's conflicted and anxious expression, she smiled and said, "Yes, so I'm going on a date with him. So, I'm going to keep my appointment. Don't follow me anymore." Chapter 629. Song Enya flew into a rage out of humiliation. Just as she was about to step forward again, she was stopped by a bodyguard who appeared just in time. Bali's security was in place. After all, they had to take care of the guests' personal safety and privacy. Hence, under the bodyguard's obstruction, Song Enya could only watch as Yunshushi was escorted onto the cruise ship. The Bali Western restaurant was located on Hushin Island, and the only way to get there was via a cruise ship. Unlike the cruise ships on the lake, this one was privately owned by the Bali Western restaurant, so it was much more luxurious than the ordinary cruise ships. Hence, when Yunshushi boarded the cruise ship under the guidance of the waiter, it immediately attracted the exclamations of those who were standing at the harbor overlooking the scenery. For a moment, there were discussions of jealousy, amazement, and envy. Oh, God! Is that the Bali Western restaurant's private cruise ship? Oh, my God! It's so luxurious. Isn't it? I heard that this cruise ship cost a fortune. Oh, God! Bali! That's my dream. Yunshushi stood in front of the railing as the cruise ship started moving. It slowly left the harbor and headed toward Hushin Island. She lowered her head and looked at the waves that kept rising. The bright starlight on the cruise ship reflected on the lake's surface, making it a beautiful sight. The silver moon on the horizon was like a hook. Standing on the deck, Yunshushi hugged her shoulders and could not help feeling a little chilly. The waiter considerately put a jacket on her. Yunshushi thanked him politely, but even with the jacket, she did not feel cold. Her heart was still cold, though. The Mews are the richest family in the capital. How can Grandpa Mu allow an actress to marry into his family? If you want to climb the social ladder of the Mews, go back and buy a pillow. Even your dreams are more realistic than this. Do you really think that Brother Mu likes you from the bottom of his heart? He's just playing with you. Do you really think that you can climb up the social ladder and marry into a rich family in a dignified manner? In this day and age, is it so justifiable to be a third party and interfere in someone else's marriage, third party? Yun Shishir's lips curled into a cold smile. What a joke. How did she become the third party? Everything that Mu Wanru originally had belonged to her. Mu Wanru was the real third party, wasn't she? She took away the token that her mothers left for her. Took away her identity. Took away her family. She had taken away her fiancé. Isn't the third party Mu Wanru? How did it become her? She of the nights to of course, of the night, to of the night, to the winds to lift her messy hair, and straightened her back to it. Well. What Mu Wanru had should have belonged to her. Since that was the case, then she would take back everything that originally belonged to her. Even if she didn't care for all of this. The Yuns. Of. Thinking of Mu Wanru's disgusting face, Yun Shishir felt disgusted from the bottom of her heart. The crimes and grievances that she had to bear for more than 10 years were all in her heart. She swore that she would take back everything that originally belonged to her. The cruise ship soon sailed to the harbor of the island. There were already people waiting for them at the harbor, standing in a row. Chapter 630. There was only one private room in the restaurant. The huge private room was at least 300 square meters. When the waiter led Yun Shishir into the private room, she was greeted by the extremely luxurious decorations. Just the beautiful and resplendent crystal chandelier alone was enough to tell that it was expensive. Yun Shishir walked to the table and saw exquisite cutlery on the table. She picked up the chopsticks and saw that they were made of jade. They were even inlaid with diamonds and engraved with her name. Yunshishi, it was so luxurious that it made one speechless. No wonder it was rumored that a couple's set meal at the Bali restaurant was worth tens of millions. Even every detail was exquisite and luxurious. She looked around but did not see Mu Yaja. Yun Shishir turned around and asked curiously, "Who made the reservation? Why don't I see him?" She could not help but feel suspicious. What was Mu Yaja trying to do? He brought her here but did not see him. The waiters looked at each other, but they smiled without saying anything. Yun Shishir saw that they were pretending to be mysterious. She raised her eyebrows slightly and decided not to think about it. She walked around the private room alone and accidentally found that there was an observation deck in the private room. Yun Shishir could not help but be attracted by the Hubble Space Telescope on the observation deck. Is this a telescope? Yun Shishir pointed at the telescope and asked. She didn't know much about astronomy, so she wasn't sure if this was a real telescope. The waiter behind her smiled and said, "Yes, I heard that there will be a meteor shower tonight. Miss Yun, do you want to take a look?" "Sure." Yun Shishir gladly agreed. She was quite interested in this telescope. Therefore, she walked to the telescope and the waiter quickly adjusted it for her. Yun Shishir clumsily looked through the telescope and saw the beautiful starry sky. Incredible. Usually, when looking up at the starry sky, one could only see the scattered stars in the night sky. However, through the telescope, one could see that these stars were not of the same size. Some stars were very small as a grain of sand. However, some of the stars were very large. They were either blue or orange in color. Most of them were like diamonds embedded in the night sky, shining brightly and very charming. The stars contrasted with each other and came into view like a beautiful starry sky. It was so beautiful that it was suffocating. Yun Shishir could not help but be fascinated by it. It was no wonder that many astronomy enthusiasts were fascinated by astronomy. Indeed, a starry sky like this could not help but be fascinated. Yun Shishir was in a daze and did not notice that the waiter behind her had already left the private room. She stared at the stars in the sky in a trance. Suddenly, a bright and dazzling shooting star flashed across the camera lens. Fast, very fast. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared without a trace. Alas, Yunshursher was still unable to contain her excitement. It was as if this was the first time in her life that she had seen a meteor. Yunshursher could not help but exclaim. She looked up and said excitedly, "I saw a meteor." Turning around, Yunshursher wanted to announce the news excitedly, but she bumped into a warm and firm chest. Her forehead hurt a little. Chapter 631. Her gaze could not help but be drawn to the exquisite diamond on the pendant. It was meticulously carved into the shape of a shooting star. At first glance, it was as eye-catching as a shooting star. Yunshursher looked up in shock. Mu Yaja had unknowingly appeared behind her. He was wearing a black shirt and had smooth and neat black hair. On his handsome face, a pair of deep and mesmerizing eyes were quietly fixed on her. In his eyes, there was a gentleness that had never been seen from him, who had always been arrogant and cold. This rare gentleness seemed to be able to melt the coldest glacier in the world. Yunshursher was shocked. Could the shooting star that had flashed across the camera just now be this diamond necklace? She knew that everything that had happened tonight was probably a so-called surprise that this man had specially arranged. But what surprised her was that she did not think that this man would waste his time on a date. From what she knew, his time should be very precious. He was in charge of the huge Dishing financial group and should be very busy every day. But, even though she was somewhat mentally prepared, she still did not expect that he would have prepared all this for her. For a moment, she was a little confused. Could it be that he knew that he had gone too far last night, so he had prepared this mysterious date to create a surprise for her and bridge the gap between them because of what had happened last night? What she didn't know was how arrogant this man was. She was his first woman. She was also the woman that he was willing to spend time and effort to pamper. He had never put so much effort into dating before. However, this was his first time doing so. Although he had consulted Min Yu's opinion on many aspects of this date, he still did not know how to guess a woman's thoughts. What did she like? What did she not like? He had no idea. He could only rely on Min Yu's suggestions and slowly figure it out. Mu Yaja lowered his head to look at her. His gaze landed on her and saw that her beautiful peach blossom eyes were staring at the diamond pendant dangling in front of her in surprise. This man had meticulously prepared all this. Could it be that he felt guilty about what had happened last night? Was that why he did all this to make up for it? Yunshursher cursed in her heart. From time to time, she would raise the corners of her eyes slightly to size up Mu Yaja's expression. "You like it?" He opened his mouth slightly, his voice clear and deep. Yunshursher did not say anything. She looked at him with anger in her eyes. She thought about how bad this man was yesterday. Seeing him, her heart was filled with anger. However, her gaze once again fell on this almost suffocatingly beautiful pendant. Even though she tried her best to maintain the cold curve of her lips, she still lightly curved her lips because of this unexpected surprise. Mu Yaja looked at the gentle light in her eyes. She probably liked this surprise. Women should have lost their resistance to such surprises. Therefore, he held her shoulders and turned her around, wanting to put the diamond pendant on her neck. Yunshursher suddenly broke free from his grasp. With his closeness, her face quickly regained its indifference. In his eyes, she was still angry with him. "You don't like it?" Mu Yaja asked in a deep voice as if he was asking for her opinion. Yunshursher glanced sideways at the pendant lying in his palm, but she shook her head coldly. Chapter 632. How could he not see her stubbornness and going against her will? This woman was clearly still angry at him. Looking at her eyes just now, it was clear that she really liked this pendant. She was clearly throwing a tantrum with him. Mu Yaja's lips curled into a playful smile, so he said, "If you don't like it, I'll throw it away." After saying this, without waiting for her to react, Mu Yaja strode to the railing of the observation deck and forcefully threw the pendant into the lake. The observation deck was very close to the lake. The strength in his hand naturally could not be underestimated. With one throw, the pendant disappeared without a trace. Yunshurshu turned her eyes and just happened to see his action. Her heart fiercely trembled, and then she could not care about maintaining the reserved expression on her face. She anxiously walked to his side and looked in the direction he had thrown the pendant, but she could not see it. Her heart was filled with anger. Yunshurshu angrily bit her lips and turned around to forcefully push him. "What are you doing? What's wrong with me?" Mu Yaja looked at her with an innocent face, as if he was confused and did not understand the situation. "Why are you randomly throwing the pendant that you gave me into the lake? Is it very interesting?" Yunshurshu's eyes were filled with anger and shame. "You said you didn't like it." Mu Yaja's voice was deep, and his deep eyes seemed to silently remind her that it was because she did not like this pendant that he had thrown it away. Yunshurshu was speechless. "You threw it away because I don't like it? If you don't like it, it has lost its value." The man slightly raised his arrogant chin, but his tone was matter-of-fact. It was as if the value of this pendant was not measured by its cost. It was measured by whether she liked it or not. If she didn't like it, then this pendant had clearly lost its value. It was not a pity to throw away something that had no value. Yunshurshu deeply knitted her brows. She was angry and amused at the same time. She said that she didn't like it, but did she really not like it? In fact, she really liked this pendant and thought it was very beautiful, but she just didn't want to forgive him so easily. How could he not understand a woman's thoughts? She actually liked this pendant very much. "I like it very much." It could be seen that he had carefully selected them. Whether it was the cutting or the polishing, every angle was very delicate. The cost of the production must be expensive. He had carefully prepared such a surprise for her, but she only wanted him to make a statement about his attitude last night. Even if it was just an apology, she would be very happy. But did he have to be so arrogant? Just because she said she didn't mean it, he threw away such an expensive pendant just like that. The most important thing was that she really liked it. Yunshurshu stared at him expressionlessly. She was angry and annoyed, so she simply turned her head away and didn't want to bother with him anymore. She turned around in a fit of pique and no longer looked at him. She pursed her lips and looked at the calm surface of the lake, but her heart was filled with anger. When Mu Yaja saw this, he could not help but smile and walked behind her. A pair of long slender legs stuck close to her skirt. Yunshurshu turned her head and pursed her lips as she stared at him. Her eyes seemed to be warning him to keep a distance from her. It was obvious that her anger had not subsided. Mu Yaja could not help laughing. He knew that she must be very angry at this moment. Not only did he not keep a distance from her, he seemed to be sticking closer to her. Chapter 633. "No." Yunshurshu ignored his closeness and coldly replied. Although he said no, there was a strong sense of displeasure in his tone. Presumably, his action of throwing away the pendant had angered her. Mu Yaja's lips curled into a smile as he leaned closer to her ear and whispered, "Little liar, you're obviously angry." "How would I dare to be angry with you, the great CEO Mu?" Yunshurshu's lips curled into a cold smile as she said in a half-mocking and half-sneering tone. "You said that you don't like that pendant, but you actually like it a lot." He lowered his eyes and his gaze fell onto her angry face as his words pierced through her thoughts. "That's your thing. You can throw it away as you wish. What has it got to do with me?" Yunshurshu retorted in a bad mood. But she totally didn't realize that at this moment, the two of them were so close to each other as they exchanged words. It seemed like they were flirting with each other. Mu Yaja's lips curled into a smile as he secretly thought that this woman was really awkward. But, she was also really stupid. She didn't even use her brain to think carefully. Did she really think that he couldn't tell how much she liked that pendant? Mu Yaja slowly opened his palm. That necklace that he had thrown away, at this moment, was like a magic trick as it quietly laid horizontally in his palm. Under the bright moonlight, it emitted an enchanting and resplendent luster. In actual fact, he had long seen that her disdain wasn't because she really didn't like it. It was just a woman who said one thing and meant another when she was angry. He could tell that she liked it a lot. That action of throwing the necklace earlier was just a bluff. He didn't expect that she really thought that he had thrown the pendant into the lake. That nervous expression was completely captured by his eyes. Mu Yaja stood behind her and gently brushed her hair aside. In an instant, that porcelain white neck was exposed in front of his eyes. Mu Yaja's eyes heated up as his back suddenly tensed up. Her soft and tender skin was snow-white and flawless, like a fine piece of art. Especially at this moment, when the light was dim, it made her skin seem even brighter. She was as beautiful as jade. She was truly as beautiful as jade. Coupled with the elegant black gown on her body, the black and white matched, giving off a forbidden seduction that came from her bones. Looking at this beautiful scene, his eyes couldn't help but become deep and serene, so much so that it implicated a certain part of his body that had quietly changed and become vigorous and hot. Yunshursher twisted her body, trying to break free from his grasp. He said in a deep voice, "Don't move. You, don't move, or I'll do you right now." Mu Yaja's voice was taut with forbearance and restraint. Hearing this, Yunshursher didn't dare to move. There was no doubt about it. If she really moved, she would not be able to move. This man was a man of his words. He really ate her dry on the observation deck. She had already experienced this man's dominance, so there was no doubt about it. While she was feeling gloomy, she suddenly felt a trace of coldness on her neck. She couldn't help but look down. Her gaze fell on her neck, but she saw an exquisite and resplendent diamond dangling from her collarbone. It was actually the one he had thrown away earlier. Didn't he throw it away? Could it be that he was just scaring her? Yunshursher was stunned. She was shocked, but her lips couldn't help curling into a smile. Mu Yaja lowered his head and whispered in her ear word by word, "Wear this pendant for me." Chapter 634. You're not allowed to take it off. His tone was as strict as ever, domineering to the point of being unreasonable. Yunshursher's fingertips gently rubbed the pendant. She looked up at him and angrily said, "Unreasonable." "That's right, I'm unreasonable." Mu Yaja slowly pulled her into his embrace from behind as his gaze fell onto her face. He saw her slightly lowering her head as her beautiful peach blossom eyes looked at the pendant on her neck. Her fingertips rubbed it lovingly as her light pink lips formed a faint smile. "Didn't you say you didn't like it?" Mu Yaja couldn't help having the thought of teasing her. Yunshursher gave a cold snort, "I just think it's a pity to throw it away." "Stubborn mouth," he lightly said. This stupid woman's mouth seemed to be very stubborn. But it could be seen that she really liked his gift. Mu Yaja stared at the shallow dimples on her face and couldn't help having some thoughts. He inexplicably wanted to fiercely seal her lips. Driven by this thought, he immediately took action. He pulled her into his arms, lowered his head, and kissed her pink little mouth. Her soft and tender lips were extremely warm and soft, revealing a sweet taste that made one want more uncontrollably. Yunshursher's eyes opened wide in astonishment. The man's kiss suddenly came and she was not prepared at all. Her eyes opened wide in a daze as his enlarged handsome face appeared in front of her. His deep silhouette was exquisite and handsome, making him look very handsome. Only when she looked at him from such a close distance did she discover that this man's eyelashes were excessively long. They were thick and black, like two black phoenix feathers. It was no wonder his gaze was so deep and seductive. It had to be said that this man had been blessed by the heavens since he was born. Outstanding features, a proud family background, and a shocking background. This kind of man should be sought after by many women. It was no wonder that in the capital, there were many socialites who liked him. Even his cousin was infatuated with him. Indeed, this kind of man was loved by all. His thin lips were slightly cold. Xianxia couldn't help but fall into a daze. She remembered that according to the physiognomy, people with thin lips were mostly fickle and overly rational. Could this man be fickle in love? She allowed him to kiss her. Her reaction was somewhat passive. She did not dare to resist too much and could only endure his domineering kiss. He kissed her fiercely and urgently. His kiss went deep into her throat. If it was possible, he probably wanted to swallow her whole. Xianxia's thoughts couldn't help but drift away inexplicably until the man hugged her waist tightly. While gently kissing her lips, he said, "That day, you blacklisted me. Was it because Mu Wanru said something to you, Xianxia was stunned and slowly opened her eyes. However, she saw that Mu Yaja had also opened his eyes and was looking at her. His eyes were asking her silently. "Why aren't you saying anything?" Mu Yaja grabbed her chin with a puzzled look on his face. At first, he only suspected that Mu Wanru had run to Xianxia to bluff and claimed that she was pregnant with his flesh and blood. Too many women were sensitive, especially a stubborn woman like Xianxia. She couldn't accept it. But it was just a suspicion. What had happened back then that made her blacklist him for no reason? He still had to ask her. His question reminded her of Mu Wanru's pregnancy. Chapter 635. Xianxia hesitated for a moment and said slowly, "She told me that she was pregnant. She accused me of being the third party in your marriage." "Ha!" Mu Yaja sneered when he heard that. He couldn't help but feel a little annoyed and helpless. "So, you believed her?" He might be able to accept it if his number was blacklisted because of other things. But she actually believed it just because a woman said a few insignificant words in front of her. He didn't even ask for any proof. He didn't even give him any chance to explain himself before he was sent to prison. This woman was too much. Xianxia couldn't help raising her eyebrows when she saw his mocking smile. "What's wrong? You believed what she said unconditionally. So?" His deep-set eyes stared fixedly at her face as he retorted, "Am I not enough for you to trust me unconditionally? Why should I believe you?" Xianxia questioned him helplessly. She didn't seem to be in a position to question him. When she found out from Mu Wanru that she was pregnant with his flesh and blood, the despair she felt was enough to destroy the heavens and earth. Without any doubt, she almost believed him. Because she really didn't seem to be in a position to question it, did she? She was his fiancée. And he was her fiancé. Even if she was pregnant with his flesh and blood, wasn't it legitimate? Shouldn't she obediently withdraw at this time? But now, she didn't think so. Everything that Mu Wanru belonged to now belonged to her. She wouldn't back down anymore. She would take back everything that belonged to her by hook or by crook. Xianxia pursed her lips at that thought, but she heard the man chuckle above her head. "My child said it." Xianxia frowned. Mu Yaja stared at her awkward expression and suddenly thought of something. He said mischievously, "You blacklisted me because you were jealous?" She looked up in shock. She saw the man looking down at her with an arrogant and smug expression on his face. Mu Yaja looked at her stunned expression. There was no anger on his face. It was full of arrogance and pride. He suddenly remembered Min Yu's words. Jealousy equals like. This woman liked him. There was no doubt about it. In fact, her love for him was extraordinary. Hence, when Mu Wanru flaunted her prowess in front of her, she flew into a rage out of humiliation and blacklisted him. "You like me." After a pause, Mu Yaja suddenly felt that this word wasn't suitable, so he changed it. "Xianxia, you're in love with me." It was a short few words, but his tone was overbearing and smug. Xianxia was a little dumbfounded as she stared at him with wide eyes. She did not know where this man got his confidence from. Jealousy equals like. He actually automatically put her into such a formula. Where did this man get his sense of self-worth from? Still not admitting it? Mu Yaja reached out and scratched her delicate nose bridge as he chuckled. This woman must love him very much to be so jealous. Min Yu said that women in love would have an incomprehensible sense of possessiveness. They usually didn't like their men to be close to any woman. The more jealous she was, the more it represented the irreplaceable position of the man in the woman's heart. Chapter 636. He had never liked jealous women. But for some reason, when he found out that Unparalleled was jealous, he felt a little happy. Unparalleled, let me tell you. Mu Yaja held her shoulders and turned her around, forcing her to look into his eyes. He said word by word, I didn't touch her. Unparalleled was stunned. She saw that he was looking at her very seriously, but there was a seriousness in his eyes that she had never seen before. Unparalleled, I haven't touched any other woman except you. Do you believe me? He explained again with a serious expression. Unparalled's eyes flashed with confusion. The doubts in her heart slowly spread. She was very surprised by his so-called explanation. Last time in the bar, Mu Wanru announced to her that she was pregnant so arrogantly. Could it be fake? She quickly changed her mind and denied it. It couldn't be fake. When she bumped into Mu Wanru in the restaurant, she really had morning sickness. There was no trace of acting. Based on her experience, she concluded that this woman must be pregnant. Because when she was pregnant with Xiao Yichen and Yu Yu, her morning sickness was very serious. And Mu Wanru's symptoms were more than a month pregnant. But Mu Yaja told her that he didn't touch her. Could she believe it? Could she believe this man? Mu Wanru was faking it to fool her. Or was this man lying to her? Her thoughts were a little messed up. Unparalled's expression suddenly turned cold. She couldn't accept that another woman was pregnant with his child. But what was even more unacceptable was that he was lying to her. Thus, Unparalled smiled tactfully but seriously. Mu Yaja, you don't have to explain so much. Mu Wanru is obviously pregnant, but you said that you didn't touch her? After a pause, she stared into his eyes and asked seriously, or are you lying to me like I'm a child? Are you messing with me? Do you really think I'm that gullible? Mu Yaja was a little angry. Are you questioning my words? Unparalled's face paled. Doubt? If you haven't touched her, then whose child is she carrying? Could it be that she cheated on you? She didn't believe that Mu Wanru had an affair, and she didn't believe that the child in her belly wasn't Mu Yaja's. If that was the case, it would be a huge scandal for the Mu family. With Mu Yaja's proud personality, how could he tolerate such a betrayal? Mu Yaja's face changed. Seeing the undisguised doubt on her face, a trace of anger immediately appeared in his eyes. Unparalled, you don't believe me? Unparalled raised her chin and said expressionlessly, I only believe in facts. He was annoyed. She is pregnant, but the child is not mine. Then whose is it? Unparalled was aggressive. Obviously, she didn't want to be perfunctorily brushed off like this. Mu Yaja's brows slightly furrowed. After a moment of silence, he said coldly, listen, she is just a chess piece to me, a chess piece to be used in exchange for the power of the Mu family. From the beginning to the end, I haven't touched her at all. As for who the child in her belly is, you will know in the future. After a pause, he clasped her shoulders tightly and said in a deep voice, you just have to remember that I haven't touched her. That's enough. Unparalled couldn't take it anymore and pushed him away. Can you not be so perfunctory with me? Chapter 637. Mu Yaja's eyes turned cold as a look of fury surfaced on his face. I never said that you're a pawn. You can get engaged to a so-called pawn, but you can't give me a proper reason. Am I actually less than a pawn in your eyes? Unparalled sneered as she retorted. Mu Yaja's face instantly darkened. Instantly, he froze. What do you mean? Xianxia curled her lips into a smile as she tried hard to maintain her composure. However, the voice that escaped from her throat was slightly trembling. Wuxia, I like you. What about you? Do you like me? Wuxia opened his mouth slightly but could not make a sound. The word like was stuck in his throat, and he could not utter it. He had always been arrogant and proud. In front of the woman he liked, he could not frankly say the word like. Seeing his silence, Xianxia's smile turned slightly cold. Then, I'll tell you, too. I like you. If I like you and have set my mind on you, can I give you my heart? What about you? Can you? He could. However, even though he thought so in his heart, the words that he wanted to say reached his lips, but no sound came out. Wuxia stared fixedly at her and was momentarily speechless. Do you know who I met just now? Xianxia's face was a little pale. Gradually, her eyelashes drooped as a look of disappointment flashed across her eyes. She said weakly, I met Song Enya. She righteously accused me in front of everyone and mocked me for being a third party. Wuxia, are my feelings cheap? Or am I just a pawn in your eyes? A woman that you can summon when you're lonely and dismiss when you're tired of me? You can give Wuwanru a proper marriage contract, but you can't give me a clean identity. I don't want a romantic date. I don't want a beautiful diamond pendant. I don't want you to go through so much trouble to please me. Xianxia looked up at him with a pale face. Two pairs of eyes collided in the air. She looked at him and suddenly leaned closer to him. She pressed against his front and raised her hand to lightly tap his chest with her fingertips. There, she could feel his sonorous heartbeat. I want this part of yours. Can you give it to me? Wuxia's handsome eyes stared at her without blinking. Xianxia's throat was dry as she questioned him again. I want to be loved and doted on legitimately. Can you give it to me? His silence from the start to the end gradually disheartened her. She laughed at herself, thinking that her earlier outburst of questioning was too laughable. In his heart, was she really just a chess piece that could come and go as he wished? Do you know what marriage means to me? If you can't even give me a proper identity, why should I like you? Xianxia gritted her teeth and said weakly, I don't want to like you anymore. That sentence was like a cold thorn that pierced deep into his flesh. In that moment, his heart felt like it was pierced by a sharp sword. She didn't want to like him anymore. Damn woman. How could she talk to herself like that? She didn't want to like him, but did he allow it? Wuxia stood there. His tall and arrogant figure seemed to be petrified. The expression on his face was as cold as ice. In his eyes, there was only shock and anger. Xianxia couldn't stand his silence and turned to leave. Chapter 638. Xianxia felt a wave of dizziness wash over her as she was pushed hard against the railing by him. Wuxia held her waist with one hand and pressed the other on the railing to keep her in front of him. I'll give you a chance to take back what you just said. He stared at her and said coldly, take back what you said, Xianxia. Take it back? Xianxia's face turned pale. She suddenly curled her lips and asked seriously, okay, which sentence do you want me to take back? Don't like me anymore. The corners of her lips curled up. She suddenly turned her eyes and looked elsewhere. Her face returned to its usual cold and expressionless state. She didn't say anything for a while. Wuxia saw that she was silent and couldn't help feeling annoyed. His dark eyes were filled with viciousness and the hand holding her shoulder tightened. Say it. Xianxia's gaze never fell on him. She wanted to speak several times, but she felt that her throat was dry. Say it. Wuxia lost his patience. This woman was really trying to anger him. He stared at her cold expression and suppressed the anger that was on the verge of bursting out. Is it that hard to take back what I said? Wuxia suddenly stared at her coldly and grabbed her chin, forcing her to look up at him. He said word by word, Yun Shishir, remember, I won't allow you to leave me. So, what do you mean by this? Yun Shishir was so angry that she laughed and her lips curled up. Muyaja, do you want me to be like a mistress that you keep by your side? Like a canary in your cage? You're my woman. Not a canary. Muyaja corrected her condescendingly as he glared at her. So, you don't have to use this to brush me off. Yes. Women, you can have many women. Yun Shishir said lightly. Even though her heart ached, she tried to maintain a calm expression on her face. But I won't be the only one. You are. Why was this woman talking to herself? Other than her, he did not have any other woman. Muyaja said in a deep voice, you are my only one. Yun Shishir stared at him in a daze. Suddenly, she asked in return, what proof can you use? You need me to give you a status. It was not a rhetorical question, but a statement. There was no doubt about it. Yun Shishir did not say a word, but it was a tacit agreement. On the observation deck, the cold wind blew. The evening breeze from the lakeside carried a bit of bone-chilling dampness. Yun Shishir leaned against the handrail. Muyaja pressed a hand on her shoulder. Although he tried to control himself, he still hurt her. Her face was still deathly still, without any ripples. Muyaja stared at her with his dark eyes. Is a piece of paper worth you so much? Could it be that this woman believed this piece of paper, but not him? Yun Shishir looked at him in astonishment. In this man's heart, could it be that the marriage certificate was just a piece of paper that was not important enough? Muyaja saw that she did not speak, so he asked again in a deep voice, compared to that piece of paper, am I really not worthy of your trust? Yun Shishir found it funny and asked back, you can't even give me a piece of paper. May I ask, how can I trust you? This piece of paper was a very sacred thing in her heart, and it was worthy of respect. But the value in his heart seemed to be very cheap. Chapter 639. Respect. Yun Shishir said firmly. In her heart, marriage was sacred. Even though the family environment she grew up in didn't give her the idea that marriage was a happy one. But in her heart, she longed for a family. However, a family had to be built on this piece of paper. Only then could it be justified. I care about it a lot. I really care about it. What exactly are you thinking? If there's even a little place for me in your heart, how can you watch our child call another woman mommy? Yun Shishir lost her composure a little and blurted out. This sentence was like a cold knife. It pierced his heart. Blood dripped. Muyaja's eyes were fixed on her. Do you really think that I want this status? Yun Shishir's face was cold. Okay. Why don't we put ourselves in the same position? What? Muyaja, I love you. Yun Shishir continued calmly, but similarly, I can't give you a status. Muyaja's body froze, and his eyes gradually darkened. I will marry another man. But you have to believe that it's just a piece of paper. Although I live under the same roof as him, he is my husband and I am his wife. You will call him daddy, and nothing will happen between him and me. But you have to believe that my heart will always be with you. Yun Shishir smiled coldly and looked at Muyaja's frozen expression. She asked with a smile, is this okay? Muyaja's eyes were filled with emotions. He seemed to be trying his best to suppress something. Yun Shishir stared at his handsome face, trying to find a trace of change on his face. What? Since you don't care about something like status, then you definitely don't care about it. Enough. Not enough. Enough. Muyaja looked at her gloomily and interrupted her with a loud shout. Yun Shishir, that's enough. Without giving her a chance to speak, he pressed down on her shoulders and kissed her fiercely. He kissed her madly without regard for anything else. It was as if the whole world was spinning. The kiss was deep and filled with fear. Her words just now had actually made him feel helpless and fearful. He couldn't imagine you calling another man daddy. It was even more unimaginable that she would become another man's wife in name. In the beginning, in his eyes, status was just a way to tie two people together. It was not binding. In his eyes, this was just a piece of paper on the Vanity Fair. It was insignificant. But now, he didn't think so. He couldn't stand her being any man's wife in name. Not even a piece of paper. Unspoken stubbornly kept her mouth shut, not giving him any chance to enter. Even though he attacked fiercely, she still did not open her mouth to welcome him. Wuxia seemed to have gone crazy. His eyes were dark red, and his strong arms hugged her waist tightly, forcing her body to be closer to his chest. But she still kept her lips tightly shut until the man tasted a faint trace of blood between their lips and teeth. Unknowingly, there was a crack on his lips. And there was a trace of blood on her lips. Wuxia looked down and the tip of his tongue slowly stroked her bleeding mouth. A trace of fishy sweetness immediately filled his mouth. Even if she was covered in wounds, she was still unwilling to accept his entry. With this fishy sweetness. Chapter 640. Unspoken, on the other hand, was like a puppet that had lost its soul. Her eyes were empty and lifeless. Pressing against his lips, Unspoken opened her empty eyes and squeezed out a few words from the roots of her teeth. Wuxia, do you love me? Wuxia paused. His handsome face froze. Unspoken persistently asked him, do you love me? I want to know. Do you treat me as a toy or as someone you love? Say it. Say it. Is this question difficult to answer? Unspoken's gaze locked onto his dark eyes. In the next second, Wuxia took advantage of her and sealed her lips fiercely once again. Pressing his lips against hers, Wuxia stared into her eyes and uttered a low and hoarse word from his throat. Love. Unspoken's eyes flashed for a second. Following that, she was in a trance for a moment and actually froze on the spot. She had thought that he would remain silent until the end. However, she had never thought that he would actually say this word out loud. Love. Wuxia repeated this word slowly and gently embellished her kiss. The tip of his tongue traced the trace of sweetness at the side of her lips and slowly said, if you want that piece of paper, I'll give it to you. If this was what she wanted the most, then he would give it to her. Unspoken was completely dumbfounded. If you want to dote on me legitimately, I'll give it to you. Unspoken was stunned by his domineering tone. It was really unbelievable that such a proud man would lower himself to this extent. In fact, he was an extremely stubborn man. Stubborn and exclusive. Once he set his mind on something, he would continue to be stubborn and no one would be able to change his mind. Similarly, no one could replace the woman he had set his mind on. Whatever she wanted, he could satisfy her. However, he would never allow her to leave him. He looked up and his deep gaze locked onto her face. His brows relaxed slightly, adding a bit of warmth and gentleness. I can give you everything you want. Other than leaving my side, I can give you anything. Unspoken looked at him in a daze. He pressed his lips against hers, his deep and clear words spilling out from between his lips. You want my body, my heart, I'll give it all to you, only you. I promise you, I won't touch any other woman, only you. As long as you. Could she understand? His confession was a little clumsy. There were no flowery words or promises like other men. Every word was so straightforward and stubborn. There was almost no hesitation as he spoke seriously to her. Unspoken, I only want you. Wuxia, as long as you like it, I can give you my entire world. In fact, he did not hold back at all. Other than leaving my side, no matter what, he could give her anything. Now, can I kiss you? Wuxia asked in a hoarse voice. He wanted her. He wanted her like a madman. This woman was a parasite. He had been poisoned by her parasite. Other than her, no one else could cure him. Xianxia pursed her lips. It was not that she was not shocked. Slowly, she wrapped her arms around his waist. It was as if she was inviting him. Suddenly, her chin was gently lifted by his slender fingers. The man's perfect face approached her ambiguously. Wuxia then lowered his head and gently covered the corner of her lips with his thin, moist lips. Chapter 641. Xianxia was stunned. Her eyes suddenly widened and she frowned in disbelief. Wuxia lowered his eyes and covered her eyes. He gently lowered his eyelids and kissed her softly. The deep affection that was so gentle that it reached her bones made her heart beat like thunder. The moonlight flowed gently and the mottled shadows of the stars. Against the pure white light, his face seemed to be plated with a layer of moonlight, making his skin look even more jade-like. Through the gaps between her fingers, Xianxia opened her eyes. The man's handsome face was startled. Wuxia imprisoned her in front of his chest. He lifted her chin with one hand and rubbed the soft hair on the side of her face with the other. He sealed her lips. It was not as aggressive as before. Instead, it was a rare tenderness. He gently sucked on her soft pink lips and carefully cleaned her lips. Following the tip of his tongue, he gently pried open the gap between her lips and brushed past her pearly white teeth. The tips of his tongue seemed to touch her as if there was nothing there. It seemed that no woman could resist this tenderness that could almost melt ice. Xianxia was kissed by him until her face and ears turned red. A layer of red immediately appeared on her cheeks. Her hands were a little restless in front of his chest. Wuxia grabbed her wrist and slowly moved it to his waist. Xianxia obediently hugged his waist. Their fingers were interlocked, but her knuckles were white from nervousness. A bunch of fireworks suddenly rose in the sky and bloomed beautifully in the night sky. Wuxia looked up slightly and gently caressed her face with his slender fingers. His fingertips touched the silky smooth skin. It made his heart skip a beat. A certain part of him was already tense to a critical point. He was ready to go. He kissed between her eyebrows. He liked her beautiful eyebrows. He kissed her eyes. He liked her soul-stirring peach blossom eyes. He kissed the tip of her nose. He liked her delicate and small nose. He kissed her lips. This was his favorite place. After tasting it, he wanted more. Wuxia's tall and straight body bullied her without restraint. She was almost bearing all of his weight, so it was inevitable that she would feel a little weak. Wuxia. The man seemed to have not heard her delicate begging for mercy. His hand slowly reached down and lifted the corner of her skirt. Wuxia. Xianxia pouted. What is it? Don't do it here. Xianxia compromised. Wuxia interrupted her blandly, it's right here. This was the most secluded and elegant place on Huxin Island. The viewing platform had the most beautiful night view of Huxin Island. At the same time, no one would disturb them. Xianxia blushed and said, I'm hungry. I'm hungry too. Wuxia's voice was hoarse, revealing a bit of suppressed lust. His skin was magnetic. His breath was like an orchid, almost burning her cheeks in an instant. Xianxia couldn't help but blush even more. Stop fooling around, okay? I'm not fooling around. I'm really hungry. I'm really hungry too. Xianxia kept quiet out of spite. This man was really. Wuxia leaned over and kissed her sensitive earlobe. He said in a deep voice, I'll feed you first, then you can feed me, This was a step of his compromise. An exchange of conditions. His deep and obscure voice revealed his dark desire. Looking at her, his eyes were very deep, but there was no need to hide it. Especially the fire in his handsome eyes, he couldn't suppress it no matter what. Xianxia licked her lips. She was really hungry. Chapter 642. In Xianxia, other than breakfast, she locked herself in the room and lay on the bed to sleep. She had not eaten or drunk for the entire day. "I want to eat first," Xianxia said. In the next second, Wuxia carried her up. Her toes left the ground and the world spun. In the blink of an eye, Wuxia sat at the dining table with her in his arms. Xianxia wanted to get down from him, but he did not allow it. His strong long arms wrapped tightly around her waist and he sat her in his arms. His chest was warm and strong, enough to accommodate her entire world. Xianxia bit her lips. Her entire body was in his arms. This position was too intimate. Her back was against his chest, and her legs were hanging on his legs. Through the thin material of his clothes, she could even clearly feel his strong heartbeat. Her face turned red. She struggled, trying to get down from him again. Wuxia's deep and magnetic voice rang above her head just in time. "Don't move. Otherwise, I'll let you feed me right now." He endured to the extreme and suppressed to the extreme. His body was clamoring for her all the time. But considering that she was hungry, he tried very hard to endure the tension and heat that was clamoring for him all the time. Every time she moved, he would break down a little. After pressing the silver service bell on the table, the dishes were quickly served one by one. Soon, a delicious sumptuous meal was presented on the table. The table was neither big nor small, but the 18 exquisite dishes were just enough to fill it. The aroma hit them, catching them off guard. They were completely immersed in this amazing aroma. French pigeon meat pine tart. Black truffle tomato with fresh oysters. Orange French foie gras. Every single one of them was the best of the best in Western cuisine. It whetted one's appetite. Xianxia stared at the dishes on the table with her mouth agape. Every dish was so exquisite, like an expensive work of art. Every dish was beautifully arranged. She was even a little reluctant to move her chopsticks, so as to destroy this extreme beauty. His stomach, however, was howling desperately. His mouth, in particular, quickly secreted a gluttonous saliva. She swallowed, obviously starving. The corners of Wuxia's lips curled up slightly. His palm caressed her hungry stomach. It looked like she was really hungry. Thus, he held her waist with one hand and picked up the fork with the other. "What do you want to eat?" Xianxia said in embarrassment. "I'll do it myself." "I'll feed you." Xianxia persisted. "No need, I can do it myself." Wuxia pinched her waist and reminded her in an ambiguous tone, "We agreed that I would feed you. Save some energy. I'll be waiting for you to feed me later." Xianxia's face turned even redder when she heard that. "You don't have to," Wuxia said slowly, "I'll feed you." His tone clearly did not allow anyone to object. Xianxia simply gave up and let him sit on her body. Wuxia forked a small piece of steak and slowly brought it to her mouth. Xianxia gently took a bite. Instantly, the meat juice overflowed. The meat was soft, and the inside was tough. It tasted great. Delicious? Delicious. It was so delicious that she almost could not speak. Her eyes swept across the dishes on the table, but her face was filled with incomparable satisfaction. Wuxia did not seem to be so enthusiastic about French food. Chapter 643. French cuisine was all about delicacy. Even if there was a slight difference in the texture, he would be able to tell right away. Different chefs had their own understanding of delicacies. Therefore, the same dish would taste different when cooked by different chefs. There was no doubt that his taste in delicacies was still better than hers. He was extremely picky. Therefore, no matter how he purposely picked something that he thought was delicious and brought it to her mouth. However, when it came to Xianxia, whose taste was a level lower than his, he completely fell for it. It was delicious. It was as delicious as Yu's cooking. However, in terms of taste, Yu's cooking was still better. French cuisine was exquisite and delicious, but it was not targeted. The person who understood her taste the most was Yu. After a period of trial and error, the little guy had figured out what his mommy's taste was. Therefore, he would cater to her taste for every delicious meal. Therefore, she couldn't help but mutter, "It's delicious, but it's still not as good as Yu's cooking." Yu knows how to cook? Wuxia raised his handsome eyebrows slightly. He was obviously a little surprised. Yes. Yes. As Unspoken spoke, she suddenly glared at him vigilantly. Don't even think about it. Yu only cooks for me. He's my personal chef. She looked a little smug. Wuxia couldn't help but pinch her cheeks affectionately. It was quite textured. Unspoken avoided his action and rubbed her belly. I'm still hungry. Feed me again. Wuxia couldn't help but laugh. His gaze swept across the dining table and landed on the fresh oyster. He scooped it up with a spoon. The soft and tender flesh made him drool. Unspoken waited expectantly for his next move. Wuxia, on the other hand, continued to stuff it into his mouth. Unspoken was stunned and froze for a moment. Didn't he say that he was going to feed her after it entered his mouth? What's wrong with you? Unspoken's eyes were filled with silent accusation as she glared at him unhappily. She had promised to feed him, but in the end, she sent it into her own mouth. Wuxia held the fresh meat between his lips and teeth, not in a hurry to swallow it. He looked back at her indifferently, as if he was silently provoking her. Unspoken was not to be outdone. She held his face and leaned over, trying to snatch the delicious food from his mouth. She pressed her lips against the corner of his lips and bit down with her pearly white teeth, snatching the fresh meat into her mouth. Delicious. She was a feast for the eyes. She was truly a feast for the eyes. No matter what a beautiful person did, it was always pleasing to the eye. Unspoken was like that. Wuxia took advantage of the situation and kissed her. The tip of his tongue flicked across her lips that were covered in sauce and deeply invaded. This could be considered as helping each other in times of need. It was the most intimate way for people to be together. He carelessly and unscrupulously dotted her lips. Unspoken was so shocked by his sudden invasion that she couldn't help but lean back. However, he didn't allow her to dodge. His palm clasped the back of her neck tightly, forcing her body to stick to him. He wasn't hungry at first. However, looking at her, he vaguely felt a little hungry. The tip of his tongue gently swept across every inch of her lips, licking those alluring pink lips clean. Not a single bit was left out. It was as if he was seriously tasting the delicious food. Thus, he used this method to feed her the delicious food mouth to mouth. At first, she was still a little uncomfortable, as if she wasn't used to such an intimate way of feeding. Thus, she reached out to take the knife and fork from his hand, wanting to do it herself. However, Wuxia's hand slightly avoided her movements. Chapter 644. She didn't know why, but the originally tasteless meal tasted amazingly delicious in her mouth. Wuxia was an extremely clean freak. He usually didn't like anyone getting close to him. Not to mention mouth to mouth, even if someone touched his hand, he would feel a sense of disgust from the bottom of his heart. However, with this woman, he actually longed for this kind of closeness. Mouth-to-mouth feeding should have been the most primitive way of feeding. Newborn babies didn't have the ability to move, so mothers would feed food into their children's mouths in this way. However, even many couples found it difficult to adapt to this kind of method. Just now, the fresh food was in his mouth, staining his lips and teeth. However, this woman naturally snatched the food from his mouth, without the slightest disgust in her eyes. Such intimacy caused a warm feeling to grow in the depths of his heart. He seemed to be infatuated with this woman's closeness. This feeling of longing was something that he had never felt before. At that moment, something that had long been frozen seemed to be deeply touched. He couldn't help but yearn for more of this kind of closeness. Therefore, when Xianxia reached out to snatch the knife and fork in his hand, he avoided it. How could he allow his fun to be interrupted? Xianxia was a little annoyed. She glared at him and said seriously, "I can do it myself. I don't need you to feed me. I'll feed you." "No, I'll do it myself. I'll feed you." "Hey, I'll feed you." Xianxia was so angry that she frowned. How could this man be so hateful? He even deprived her of the freedom to eat. Wuxia found that her coquettish and slightly annoyed expression was actually a little cute. He liked her expression very much. Not eating? Wuxia saw that she was frozen in his arms and didn't move, so he asked. Xianxia seemed to be angry and didn't want to pay attention to him. She seemed to be acting coquettishly, but also seemed to be sulking. The man lowered his head slightly and asked. "Are you full?" Xianxia pursed her lips tightly and seemed to ignore him. "Since you're full, it's your turn to feed me." As Wuxia spoke, his warm palms slowly extended into her skirt, following her soft and tender skin to explore the mysterious area. Xianxia was so shocked that she hurriedly stopped him. Somewhat embarrassed and annoyed, she said, "What are you doing?" "Eat you." "You? What are you thinking about all day long?" Xianxia felt angry and amused at the same time. "I was thinking about how to eat you." Xianxia was completely speechless. She only said gloomily, "But I'm not full yet." Wuxia raised his eyebrows slightly, sucking on another piece of steak as he inched closer to her face. But this time, she couldn't care less about it. He was simply too hungry. Once a person was hungry, they couldn't care less. Thus, she gently hugged his shoulders and took the food from his mouth, swallowing it happily. He tirelessly used such a complicated method to feed her again and again. And Xianxia gradually accepted the way he fed her. Like an obedient kitten, she nestled in the man's arms and took the food from his mouth calmly. In the process, more than half of the delicious food on the table was quickly gone. Wuxia sucked on a mouthful of foie gras. After feeding her, he took the opportunity to kiss her again. Chapter 645. He hugged her to sit on his body and deepened the kiss. Xianxia still had some sense. She realized that they were in the restaurant's private room and she didn't know when someone would break in, so she couldn't help but feel nervous. "Don't be here. Someone will come in later." "No." He coaxed her with his lips against hers. This was his world. Without his orders and summons, who would dare to step in here? Her apprehension was therefore entirely superfluous. Xianxia couldn't resist and could only let him kiss her deeper. It had to be said that Wuxia's kissing skills weren't exquisite at first. When he first kissed her, he took her by force. He was overbearing, but he was also a little clumsy. But now, his kissing skills were superb and exquisite, and he was already on her finger. She wasn't his opponent at all. After a lingering kiss, she felt as if she was about to turn into a pool of spring water in his arms. He didn't even take the next step. Just by kissing like this, she felt as if there was an electric current running up her spine and her heart was beating fast. Xianxia's shoulders couldn't help trembling slightly and she shivered. She couldn't help but reach out her hand to resist his attack. Wuxia, however, took the opportunity to kiss her jade-like fingertips and pecked them lightly. A numbness instantly spread from her fingertips to her heart. Then, he lifted her chin with his slender fingers, lowered his eyes, and kissed her on the lips, twisting and rubbing against her. Wuxia hugged her waist and stood up with her in his arms. She let out a cry of surprise, and by the time he came back to his senses, she was already in an ambiguous position with her body pressed tightly against his. It was so ambiguous that it was unreasonable. The temperature in the room suddenly rose. Mu Yaja pecked her lips and whispered in her ear, "Xianxia, stay with me." His voice was clear, deep, and extremely magnetic, but inadvertently revealed an unprecedented pampering. He said that he wanted her to be with him. He gave her the whole world. His whole world. Xianxia's face couldn't help but heat up a little. She slowly nodded and softly said, "N," which could be considered a happy agreement. Okay, be together. She would give him the whole world. Her whole world. There was another private room in the private room. The bathroom, bed, sofa, everything was fully equipped, just like a dreamy suite. Mu Yaja carried her to the sofa and carefully placed her on it. It was as if she was an extremely fragile treasure. His gentle movements made her feel as if she was in a dream. It was as if she had never been so gently doted on by a man before. Could it be a dream? Xianxia was inexplicably worried about personal gains and losses. She was scared witless. He was afraid that everything in front of him was just a dream. When the dream was shattered, he woke up. Xianxia was in a daze. She couldn't help but reach out her hand and caress his handsome face. Her slender fingers caressed every inch of his extraordinary features. It was unbelievably real. It was not a dream. Her fingertips couldn't help but tremble slightly. Mu Yaja held her hand and kissed it gently. Then, their fingers intertwined and his body slowly covered hers. In this position, he entered her. There was no aggressive attack, no forceful taking. His movements were gentler than any other time. He cherished her. He couldn't bear to hurt her. He wanted her to clearly feel how wonderful it was to make love with him. In the aftertaste of love, she gently closed her eyes and lay in his arms. She rested her head on his warm chest and wrapped her fingers around the necklace on her collarbone. The diamond embedded in the pendant was cut into the shape of a beautiful shooting star. It was exquisite, noble, and elegant. Chapter 646. It was so beautiful. Xianxia's eyes were curved, and her eyes were bright as if she was smiling. She liked the pendant so much that she couldn't bear to part with it. She didn't hide her love for the pendant at all. Seeing that she seemed to really like it, he was very happy. Minyu, this kid, was not bad sometimes when he came up with ideas. Mu Yaja wrapped one arm around her body, lowered his head, and kissed her gently between her eyebrows. Xianxia pursed her lips and smiled shyly. Her fair, jade-like face was pink and tender. She was obviously shy, and the shallow dimples on her cheeks made her look a little lovey-dovey. Her dimples were very beautiful. They were shallow and small, and when she smiled, they were too sweet. Mu Yaja couldn't help but kiss her dimples with infatuation. He really liked her naive look. She was lively and fragrant. She was charming and enchanting. She was clearly such a tender and pure beauty, but her bones seemed to exude the most primitive temptation of a woman, like a charm. He even suspected that this woman must have been a disaster in her previous life. She was born in ancient times and deserved to be a demon concubine who bewitched the emperor. Looking at her lovely appearance, Mu Yaja's throat moved, and his lower abdomen faintly tightened again. No matter how much he wanted this woman, he could never get enough of her. Xianxia had no idea what kind of deep water the man beside her was in at this moment, and she also didn't know that this man loved her dearly and was trying hard to suppress the vigorous lust in his body. She suddenly looked up and smiled. She thought for a moment and asked carefully, "Mu Yaja, I want to ask you a question." "Je." Mu Yaja suddenly said a word, but Xianxia was a little stunned. She didn't understand the meaning of the word. Mu Yaja saw her stunned expression and couldn't help but reach out to touch her nose. He laughed and said, "Little fool, you don't have to call my name." When he said that, Xianxia was smart enough to understand the meaning of his words. She blushed and asked tentatively, "Je?" Her voice was soft and gentle, but her one word was enough to melt his bones. It was just a single syllable, but it was full of killing power. It was as if an electric current was flowing through his limbs and bones. To be able to use this title on him meant that they were the closest people to him. Xianxia was the first. Her voice was soft, and it was very pleasing to the ears. He liked her calling him that. Thus, Wuxia lightly pecked her lips and requested, "Say it again." Xianxia pursed her lips. She was obviously a little shy. "Say it again." Make it softer." Satisfied, Wuxia kissed her on the lips again as if rewarding her. The tip of his tongue traced the contours of her lips lovingly. Xianxia pushed him away coquettishly. "Hey, why are you like this?" "What?" "I just wanted to ask you a question." "Let's talk about it later." Wuxia didn't have the heart to care about other things. He only wanted to taste her beauty and tenderness to his heart's content. Xianxia saw that the handsome face was unscrupulously pressing down on her and reached out to block his lips. "Can I see Xianxia in the future?" she murmured softly. Her face was obviously nervous and pleading. She liked Xianxia very much, and she also felt sorry for this child. Chapter 647. The last time she saw this child at the amusement park, even though they had been estranged for 6 years, she still felt extremely close to him. Mother and son were connected by blood. He was, after all, her flesh and blood. She had not seen this child for 6 years, but her yearning for him had never stopped. That day, when little Chen complained in front of her that "Daddy doesn't want me anymore," her heart had also broken into pieces. Her heart ached for this child. When Yu was young, she studied many books on child psychology. Yu only had her as his mother. He never knew who his father was. When he was in kindergarten, Yu would often ask her if he had a father. Every time this happened, Xianxia's heart would ache terribly. She had always worked hard for Yu. He only had her. Without a father, his family was not complete. Thus, she tried her best to create a happy childhood for him. She did not want him to become an emotional orphan. Yu, on the other hand, was sensible and well-behaved. Later, he did not ask about his father. The mother and son depended on each other. With her hard work, Yu did not have a lonely childhood. However, when she saw Xianxia at the amusement park that day, she saw undisguised loneliness in his eyes. Lonely. This child looked very lonely. She was surprised by this turn of events. It was different from Yu. From the moment Xianxia was born with a silver spoon in his mouth, he was destined to be doted on. Yu did not have a father. Xianxia, on the other hand, had a father and a mother. Logically speaking, this child should not be so lonely and should have a blissful and wonderful childhood. However, when Xianxia saw Xianxia's lonely and empty eyes that day, she felt as if a deep wound had been torn in her heart. The pain was unbearable. He was like a severely injured animal curled up in a corner, licking his wounds alone. It was not that Xianxia was not surprised. How did this child survive for the past 6 years? Could it be that Wuxia did not love him enough? However, after Xianxia thought about it, after understanding Wuxia's character, she knew that she wouldn't spend much effort on Xianxia. After all, she wasn't his biological daughter. After all, it was not a piece of meat that fell from his body. When it came to Xianxia, how could he expect Wuxia to have any maternal instincts? Did he want Wuxia to dote on Xianxia like her own son? Presumably, Wuxia was only doing this for Wuxia's sake. On the surface, she treated Xianxia like a son, but in reality, children were sensitive and could acutely sense the emotions of adults. It was obvious that Xianxia was not close to Wuxia. As for Wuxia, he was Xianxia's father. Naturally, he had to play the role of a strict father. In a child's heart, if a mother was a gentle harbor, then a father should be a strict and imposing figure. He should be a great hero. Without a doubt, Mu Yaja was very strict with Xiao Yichen's education. This child was really amazing. She had seen his skills. In the haunted house, his kick in the air was comparable to that of an adult man. Although he was only 6 years old, he already had the bearing of a young man in his every movement. Chapter 648. She wanted to make it up to this child. Mu Yaja caught the pleading and cautious look in Yunshishir's eyes. He could not help but recall that day at the hospital when Yunshishir carried Yu away. Xiao Yichen chased after her reluctantly with tears streaming down his cheeks. Sometimes, one's bloodline was a very mysterious thing. Yunshishir did not know. Mu Yaja, however, knew. It was not that Mu Wanru had not tried to enter Xiao Yichen's heart. She tried to please and dote on Xiao Yichen, but she could not get him close to Mu Wanru from the bottom of his heart. However, although Yunshishir and Xiao Yichen had only interacted for half a day at most, Xiao Yichen was obviously very concerned about her. This child was cold on the outside but warm on the inside. This was very similar to him. He was the same when he was young. Other than his mother, he was not close to anyone. After his mother passed away, he sealed his heart. As for Xiao Yichen, other than in front of him, he seemed to be as cold as frost when interacting with others. He was not close to anyone. Even Mu Sheng, who loved him to the bone, kept a distance from the little lad. He sealed himself in his own world. He was very strict with Xiao Yichen. When Xiao Yichen was only 4 years old, he threw him into the special training camp and underwent hellish training from a young age. The child was in awe of him. Yet, he yearned to be close to him. It was just that he was usually busy with work and could not take care of everything. Hence, it was inevitable that he would neglect to interact with the child. Thinking of this, Mu Yaja could not help but laugh. It seemed that he was not a very qualified father. His gaze fell on her as he replied blandly, "Of course, you can." Yunshishir was slightly stunned when she heard this. Then, her eyes widened in surprise. She was caught off guard by this sudden happiness. Really? How could this man agree so easily? She was in disbelief. Yunshishir was a woman who knew how to adapt to the circumstances. She loved Xiao Yichen very much, but she did not forget that she had signed a contract with him. The terms of the contract stated that she would unconditionally give up custody of Xiao Yichen. However, things were different now. Mu Yaja promised her that he would give her the whole world, his whole world. However, she did not ask for much. She only wanted a home. A home with him and 2 children. She initially thought that the man would, at most, promise her to meet little Yichen once in a while. She did not expect him to agree so decisively. Her heart was filled. The man's lips curled into a smile. Why not? This was their child's. Was SSSSSSSS. She was Xiao Yichen's biological mother. Why couldn't she see Xiao Yichen? Thank you. Yunshishir smiled contentedly. Is that all? Mu Yaja lowered his eyes and looked at her. Obviously, he was not satisfied with such a simple word. Thank you. He did not need a verbal thank you. Yunshishir was not enlightened in this aspect, so she could not understand the meaning behind his words. It was often said that a woman's heart was like a needle at the bottom of the sea. However, she did not know that a man's heart was deeper than the sea. Especially a black-bellied man like Mu Yaja. He was even more unfathomable and unpredictable. Mu Yaja lifted his chin slightly and looked at her from the corner of his eyes. The meaning in his eyes could not be more obvious. Yunshishir understood the meaning in his eyes. This man was really a kissing maniac. Chapter 649. Yunshishir hooked her arm around the back of his neck and pressed her lips tightly against his. Mu Yaja cupped the back of her head with his hand and deepened the kiss. Charming, deep, and reluctant to part. Just as Yunshishir thought that she was about to suffocate, the kiss ended abruptly. Xianxia snuggled in his arms lazily like a kitten. Suddenly, she thought of something and said, "Wuxia." Just as she said those 3 words, the man's light gaze landed on her face. Xianxia blushed and stammered, "Je." Only then did the man's lips curl into a satisfied smile. "Xiao Chen, he. I think he's very skilled. Have you been training him since he was young?" Wuxia replied, "Yes. I sent him to the training camp when he was 4. The Cheetah Commando unit was the top special forces unit. The training was not the usual harsh. The elite soldiers from the Cheetah Commando unit could not be compared to the average soldiers. They were the elite soldiers in the truest sense. It was not an exaggeration to say that they licked the blood from the muzzle." Xianxia could not help but click her tongue. No wonder that child's skills are so abnormal. "You've been training him like this since he was young?" The corner of Wuxia's lips twitched slightly. Did this woman just say that Xiao Chen was abnormal? May I ask, then, what was Yuntianyo's rank? Xiao Chen was skilled in martial arts because he had specially guided the child to this path. He had put in a lot of effort into this child. What about Yuntianyu, though? This child was the real terror. He was self-taught in the truest sense. He was simply a business genius. It was obvious that Xianxia only treated him as an ordinary 6-year-old child. She did not even enroll him in a hobby course. This child, however, had naturally evolved. At the age of 7, he was already worth hundreds of millions. This was a real abnormality, all right? Compared to him, Xiao Chen was obviously much more normal in a sense. Xianxia did not notice the strange look in Wuxia's eyes and only rebuked him. "The child is still so young, yet you're imposing so much training on him. This will hinder his development. A 6-year-old child should be at the age of being carefree. He should be given a free childhood. Xiao Chen's talent in this area since he was young." Wuxia's voice. Xianxia was clearly surprised by this. Wuxia glanced at her and smiled. "If this child is properly groomed, she'll become a genius strategist." One was Yu, the other was Little Chen. Things like genes were truly inconceivable. Xianxia shook her head in a daze. I still think that Xiao Chen's ability is too abnormal. It's really unscientific for a child to have the skills of an adult." Wuxia's brows twitched violently. This stupid woman. Compared to Yu, that little demon king, Xiao Chen was no longer abnormal. In comparison, Xiao Chen was practically a little angel. Xiao Chen's skills were indeed frightening, but his mentality was not much different from that of a child his age. Yuntianyo's EQ and IQ were no longer in the category of a child. Xianxia had not seen the frightening side of Yuntianyu, but Wuxia had experienced this child's skills. Chapter 650. The two of them were silent for a long time. Xianxia couldn't help but ask. There was a doubt that had been lingering in her heart for a long time. She had always wanted to ask him for confirmation, but she never had the chance. After thinking for a long time, she still wanted to ask him. "Wuxia, can I ask you a question?" Xianxia suddenly asked. "Yes, ask." Xianxia suddenly sat up straight and faced him, her eyes calm. "You should know my identity." Wuxia was stunned, but he soon understood what Xianxia was referring to. After careful consideration, he decided not to hide it from her, so he confessed. "I found out about your identity 6 years ago." Xianxia was shocked. She would never have thought that this man would have found out about her identity 6 years ago. "How did you know about my identity?" "DNA." He looked up. "Have you forgotten? 6 years ago, before you signed the surrogacy contract, you did a blood test. Your blood sample report shows that your blood type is MNSSU. This blood type is very rare, the rarest of the rare blood types." Xianxia frowned slightly. Her blood type was indeed very rare in the world. But how could you be so sure that I'm Mu Qingqing's daughter just based on my blood type? Unspoken asked. You know, there are many coincidences. Maybe it's just a coincidence. He looked at her and suddenly said, You look very much like her, very much like her. They were exactly the same. Especially her temperament and charm, it was impossible to replicate. If her photo was placed next to Mu Qingqing's, no one would suspect that they were not mother and daughter. Mu Yaxia still retained the appearance of Mu Qingqing when she was young in the depths of his memory. When Mu Qingqing left the Mu family, he was already 5 years old and could remember things. Even if his memory of Mu Qingqing was very vague, her beautiful face was deeply engraved in his memory and left a deep impression. When he saw her photo 6 years ago, he felt that she was somewhat familiar. It was only when he saw Mu Qingqing's photo in Mu Xing's study that his suspicions were confirmed. Therefore, he ordered the hospital to take Unspoken's blood sample for a paternity test. The DNA database still has Mu Qingqing's DNA report. After comparison, your DNA matches hers perfectly. This answer completely confirmed his guess. Mu Yaxia lowered his gaze and met her eyes. I've already found out that you're Mu Qingqing's daughter. So you already knew. Unspoken smiled bitterly. She lowered her eyes slightly and slowly said, Mu Wanru stole my jade pendant. By a freak combination of factors, she took my identity and was recognized by the Mu Jia. Sadly, I only found out about this matter recently. From the moment she entered the Mu family, I thought that she was very suspicious. Unspoken was a little surprised. Then, why didn't you say anything? Is it important? Mu Yaxia suddenly asked. Who was Mu Wanru? Was her identity real? It did not matter to him. Why is it not important? Unspoken smiled bitterly. If fate didn't play tricks on me, I would have been your fiancé from the start. They would not have met so late. She would not have met him in such an awkward position. Chapter 651. If not, they would not have met so late. She would not have faced him in such an awkward position. Instead, she would have stood beside him as his legitimate fiancé. Mu Yaxia smiled at this. He could not help but ruffle her silky hair. This silly woman must have thought that if she were the one who had returned to the Mu family 15 years ago, she would have become his legitimate fiancé. Alas, he did not think so. In a way, if Mu Wanru had not replaced her, he might not have fallen in love with this woman. 15 years ago, he could only resist and reject Mu Qingqing. The young Mu Yaxia harbored a strong enmity toward this woman. Mu Qingqing was the woman his father dreamed of and the woman his mother hated for the rest of her life. She was the woman his father cherished for the rest of his life. Mu Lianqing had given her his love for the rest of his life. His heart had always been with Mu Qingqing, and it had never left her. Infatuation and devotion. Jiang Yishan's initial anger and humiliation to her eventual despair and depression were all caused by this woman. In Mu Yaxia's mind, Mu Qingqing was undoubtedly a woman who had committed a heinous crime. It was this woman who, without any effort, made his parents' marriage disappear in name only. She was the main culprit. Hence, when Mu Xing pushed the 9-year-old Mu Wanru in front of him and told him that she was Mu Qingqing's daughter, his younger sister, and his future wife, Mu Yaxia was furious. Mu Yaxia looked at Mu Wanru with eyes full of disgust. He found her disgusting. However, for the inheritance of the Mu family's head, he did not hesitate to use her. He used her as the price to obtain the inheritance of Disheng Financial Group. It was only when he grew up that he understood. His father and mother's marriage was a sacrifice in the game between the rich and powerful. This marriage had nothing to do with romance or love. One had no choice but to marry, and the other had no choice but to marry. It was a transaction in name only. Mu Qingqing was not a third party. On the contrary, she had always been a chaste woman. However, his father's infatuation with Mu Qingqing had never changed. Only then did he erase his hatred towards Mu Qingcheng. Perhaps, if she were the one Mu Sheng had brought back to the Mu family 15 years ago, he did not even dare to imagine if she would become his pawn. Mu Wanru replaced her identity and entered the Mu family, but she also replaced her and became the chess piece in his hands. To replace her as the victim. Fate seemed to have its own will. They had met at just the right time. Sometimes, a freak combination of factors might not actually be a freak combination of factors. However, in order to meet her, he had probably used up all his luck. 6 years ago, Mu Wanru was found to be infertile. You should know about this, Mu Yaja suddenly said slowly. Yun Shishir nodded. Yes, I know. He lowered his gaze. She wasn't born infertile. When Yun Shishir heard this, she widened her eyes in shock and looked at him in disbelief. How can that be? I heard that the Mu family even invited the most authoritative medical research center in the country for this matter. Dishing Financial Group controls 40% of the country's medical market share. Mu Yaja's lips curled into an extremely sinister smile. That's why it's not difficult for me to forge a diagnosis. Chapter 652. What do you mean? She somewhat understood, but also somewhat did not understand. She always felt that Mu Wanru's pregnancy was very suspicious from the beginning to the end. Thinking about it carefully, it's very strange. 6 years ago, Mu Wanru rushed into the room and condescendingly threatened her. If not for her infertility, she would not be the surrogate. Therefore, she learned that the fiancé of the employer who signed the contract with her was infertile. How could a person who had been judged by various authoritative organizations suddenly get pregnant? It's extremely strange. It's simply impossible. Although there are miracles, Mu Wanru's miracle is too strange. Mu Yaja looked at her face that constantly changed, and slowly said, her so-called infertility diagnosis was forged by me. Forged by others. Yes. What kind of power does this man have? In the capital, Mu Yaja's family business is big, and he can cover the sky with one hand. And Mu Yaja is a person who can turn clouds and rain with a wave of his hand, playing with a lot of carnage. To forge a certificate of infertility, for him, it's just a matter of moving his mouth. But, why did you do this? Yun Shishir was shocked and asked the confusion in her heart. Mu Yaja's eyes slightly twitched, and the bottom of his eyes burst out a biting cold light, but he said lightly, because she is a chess piece. A chess piece must obey the will of the master. This is the duty of a chess piece. Yun Shishir was shocked. However, after thinking about it carefully, she was not surprised. Such ruthless and indifferent words, from his mouth, she did not feel strange. However, she still felt confused. Chess piece? What chess piece? At the beginning, Grandpa ordered me to marry her. Mu Yaja hooked up his lips and smiled. If I get engaged with her, I can get the inheritance of the Mujia's lord. The Mujia is very big, but not everyone is qualified to enter the Mujia's main house. Only the Mujia's patriarch and the next generation's patriarch are eligible to live in the Mujia's main residence. At that time, his father had passed away. In such a large clan, he and his mother depended on each other for survival, and every step they took was filled with trepidation. The Mujia also has many factions within the Mujia. Both the direct descendants and the cadet branches were eyeing him like a tiger watching its prey. He was Mu Sheng's proudest grandson and the most favorable candidate to be the next head of the family. Thus, there was no doubt that he had become a thorn in the side of those people. Many people wanted to get rid of him. Every day, every moment, passed with fear and trepidation. Therefore, at that time, the inheritance of the Mu family was undoubtedly a protective talisman for him and his mother. At that time, grandfather was old and his health was deteriorating. After my father passed away, the position of the head of the family had always been empty. Many people were eyeing it covetously, and grandfather had always been hesitant about whether he should settle the position of the head of the family. Mu Yaja said expressionlessly, as for me, as the most powerful candidate, many people are eyeing me covetously. But I wasn't old enough then. In order to get the power of succession, I used marriage as a bargaining chip. Mu Wanru, on the other hand, is just a pawn for me to use. Do you think I'll have feelings for a chess piece? Yun Shusher's heart turned cold. This man, he was actually so cold and two-faced. He could actually use someone to this extent. If Mu Wanru knew that her infertility diagnosis was all used by this man, and she was the victim of his schemes, how would she feel? Chapter 653. She felt that Mu Wanru was really pitiful. She was so affectionate to the man she loved, but in the end, she didn't know that she was just a pawn in Mu Yaja's hands. Pitiful, sad, but she didn't feel sympathy. Wasn't she asking for all this? Yun Shusher was shocked and couldn't help but feel that it was unbelievable. Then, if it was her who returned to the Mu family 15 years ago, would she also become a pawn of a man? Then, she's pregnant now. Whose is the child? She asked carefully. Mu Yaja glanced at her and then said, "It's not mine." Then whose is it? Alan, my personal assistant. You probably haven't seen him before. Yun Shusher thought about it carefully for a while. Amidst her thoughts, she quickly realized that she might have seen this man before. That day in the bathroom of the restaurant, she had seen a man who had an ambiguous relationship with Mu Wanru. Although Mu Wanru appeared to be distant from him, from the man's behavior and expression, and even the way he looked at Mu Wanru, it was silently announcing the intimate relationship between them. How intimate? She didn't know. I've seen that man. He looks clean and gentle. He's probably the Alan you mentioned. When? Just a few days ago, I met him in a restaurant. You saw him? Yes. What did she say to you? Yun Shusher's expression changed. She told me that she's pregnant with your flesh and blood. Mu Yaja played with her fingers with interest, then suddenly looked up and glanced at her playfully. So, you're jealous. It was not a rhetorical question, but a statement. Because of jealousy, she put his number on the blacklist. No. Yun Shusher denied stubbornly. Mu Yaja obviously didn't believe her, and there was a playful smile in his eyes. Little liar, you're obviously jealous. No. Okay, no. He smiled indulgently, but did not intend to argue with this woman who did not mean what she said. She didn't expect this little fool to be so arrogant. He liked her arrogance. He liked everything about her. Yun Shusher stared at his handsome face and suddenly burst into laughter. She couldn't hide the smile on her face. What are you laughing at? Mu Yaja frowned and asked in confusion. Our young master Mu has been cuckolded. Yun Shusher teased mercilessly. Mu Yaja's expression instantly changed, and his eyes suddenly became as cold as ice. It doesn't count. Huh? He suddenly stood up and grabbed her wrists, pulling her into his embrace. Yun Shusher was caught off guard and fell into his arms. Mu Yaja lifted her chin and said word by word, "You are my woman." She's not. Yun Shusher was shocked, and her eyes widened. So, it doesn't count. I'm just joking, and you're taking it seriously? Yun Shusher covered her mouth and laughed. Mu Yaja, you're really like a child sometimes. No. Mu Yaja lowered his gaze and hugged her in his arms. Lowering his head, he pecked her fingertips and breathed out, "I'm your man." Yun Shusher's cheeks blushed, and she pursed her lips without saying a word. I'm your man, so I'll protect you. This was a responsibility that he had to fulfill as her man. She looked up and gently bit her lower lip with her pearly white teeth. Chapter 654. Her heart was deeply touched by his words. Mu Yaja, are you not letting me into the Mu family to protect me? Huh? Why do you ask? Intuition, I guess. Yun Shusher's eyes curved as her lips curled up slightly. The Mu family gives me the feeling that it's a tiger's den. It doesn't feel warm at all. The family I want isn't like this. I won't let you step into such a scary place. Mu Yaja caressed her flawless face and could not help but touch her eyelashes. I'll protect you and you well. Song Enya was sent to the hospital by a friend. The abrasions had already scabbed over, and the doctor cleaned and bandaged them for her. For an ordinary person, this was not considered a serious injury. However, for Song Enya, who had never suffered any injury since she was young, this was probably the most serious one she had ever suffered. Along the way, she was depressed. When she thought of Yun Shusher's heart-wrenching words, she felt extremely aggrieved. When Jiang Qimeng and Song Yunxi saw her return, they wanted to invite her to eat dessert. However, when they saw her worried face and her limping, they looked at each other in shock. Jiang Qimeng's heart ached and she immediately went forward to ask, Enya? What happened to you? Song Yunxi also hugged her shoulders nervously and asked a few questions. Song Enya did not say a word. He lowered his head until he saw the bandaged wound on her knee. He scanned her from head to toe and saw that there were different degrees of abrasions all over her body. She was in a sorry state. Enya, what happened to you? Song Yunxi was a little anxious. Why are you covered in injuries? Boo-hoo. Brother. Song Enya's nose twitched. In the end, she could not hold it in and threw herself into his arms, wailing bitterly. Enya, what happened to you? Why are you like this? What exactly happened? Tell me. Jiang Qimeng was also anxious at the side. However, Song Enya just kept crying sadly. She curled up in Song Yunxi's arms and cried as if the world was about to collapse. Song Yunxi's heart ached and she was at a loss. However, at this moment, she didn't know what to do with her precious little sister. Jiang Qimeng was also anxious at the side. Song Enya had always been the princess of the Song Yunxi family. She was the apple of her parents' eye and was especially doted on. However, when Jiang Qimeng saw her precious daughter crying wantonly in Song Yunxi's arms, she could not help but feel a knife in her heart. But she couldn't do anything about her daughter. Her daughter had always liked to stick to her since she was young, but for some reason, after puberty, she became less close to her. No matter what happened, he rarely mentioned it to her. Perhaps it was because he had matured and some things were inconvenient to tell her. Therefore, as her mother, Song Enya rarely told her what was on her mind. Instead, she was very close to Song Yunxi and would tell her everything. After all, Song Yunxi was the eldest brother in the family, and he loved his two younger sisters very much. Song Enya was very dependent on him. Hence, Jiang Qimeng gave Song Yunxi a look. The latter understood and lowered his head to Song Enya. Enya, tell me if there's anything. Brother will make a decision for you, okay? Song Enya nodded slowly and said in a choked voice, Brother. I'm so sad. I feel like I can't breathe. She thought of Yun Shusher's provocation in front of her. Every single word of his was still ringing in her ears. Chapter 655. She did not believe it. She really did not believe that Yun Shusher was Brother Mu's beloved woman. She also did not believe that Xiao Yichen was her and Brother Mu's child. However, facts spoke louder than words. Yun Shusher did not seem to be lying. The main thing was that she had carefully observed this woman's eyebrows and eyes. They really resembled Xiao Yichen's. Could it all be true? Years ago, there was a rumor that Mu Wanru was infertile, so the Mu family offered a sky-high price for Xiao Yichen to be a surrogate and not Mu Wanru's biological child. Could Yun Shusher be that mysterious surrogate mother? Song Yunxi brought her into the room and sat on the bed. Under Song Yunxi's gentle persuasion, Song Enya finally calmed down a little. She relied on Song Yunxi as much as anyone else. Song Yunxi was the only one who could truly tolerate her unreasonable behavior. It was to the extent that she was only willing to talk to him about anything. "Brother, do you think it's possible between Brother Mu and me?" Song Enya clenched her hands tightly and asked carefully. Song Yunshi was furious. He suddenly stood up with a gloomy expression. "I knew it was him. Other than him, no one else has the ability to make you so distracted." He paced back and forth on the spot. Suddenly, he squatted in front of her and held her shoulders tightly. He asked seriously, "Silly sister, do you like that man so much? I've told you many times that it's impossible between you and him. Didn't I tell you to give up? I like him. I've liked him for more than 10 years. You're asking me to give up just like that? I can't take it lying down, brother." She pouted. "But you're related to him by blood. No one knows better than you whether it's possible between you and him." Song Yunshi slammed the table in anger. His sister had liked to stick to Muyaja since she was young. When they were young, she would follow him and call Muyaja uncle. But without the adolescent years of a young girl's heart, she felt that this uncle was constantly reminding her of their blood relationship. She deceived herself and changed the way she addressed Muyaja. It was as if this would shorten the distance between them. He didn't know what this girl was thinking. She was always talking about Brother Mu, Brother Mu. It was as if she had lost her mind. He was possessed by her. Irritated, Song Yunshi rubbed the hair on his forehead and glared at her in exasperation. The Missy was taken aback by his anger, but she persisted. "So what if we're related by blood? I like Brother Mu and want to marry him." "Nonsense. You're just messing around." Song Yunshi stood up angrily. "Song Enya, you and I should call him uncle. You're his niece. It's fine if you don't call him Uncle Mu, but you keep saying that you want to be with him. Don't you know that this is indecent? If word gets out that you're doing this, it'll only embarrass the Song family. You'll embarrass me and our parents." Song Enya was indignant. "I have many cousins who are together, and their children are all very healthy. This isn't considered indecent, right? What are you doing? Are you lying to yourself?" Song Yunshi glared at her angrily and could not help but reach out to poke her head. "Use your brain and think about it. If you marry your uncle, what will outsiders think?" Chapter 656. "You." Song Yunshi pointed at her and cried out in anger. Song Enya glared at her and pursed her lips stubbornly. However, looking at the tears in her eyes, Song Yunshi's heart softened. "Let's not talk about this anymore. It's useless for me to talk about this. You'll figure it out sooner or later." Song Yunshi could only comfort herself and hope that her sister would completely give up on Muyaja one day. Even in the wealthy families, such marriages between cousins were not uncommon. However, the Song family had been a famous scholarly family in the capital for generations, especially during Old Master Song's generation. They were one of the 10 founding generals of the country and had outstanding achievements. Their status in the capital was important and illustrious. Even the Mu family had to give the Song family some face. Therefore, the Song family was strict. If Old Master Song knew about this, he would probably be so angry that he would expel Song Enya from the family. Song Yunshi naturally could not let her sister go astray and sit back and do nothing. "I can't figure it out. I really can't figure it out. I thought Brother Mu doted on me the most. I thought he liked me too." Song Enya could not figure it out no matter how hard she tried. She was the person Muyaja had always doted on the most. Even Mu Wanru, his fiancée, he had never doted on her so much. In Song Enya's eyes, Muyaja was cold to everyone else, but toward her, he doted on her in every possible way. She thought that she must be very special in Muyaja's heart. However, tonight's incident had dealt him a huge blow. "There's a reason why he dotes on you so much. Don't you know?" Song Yunshi felt that she was hopeless. "What's the reason?" "Because you look very similar to Auntie Jiang." Song Yunshi sat in front of her and carefully looked at her face. From the photo, you look almost exactly the same. When Auntie Jiang passed away, almost no one could get close to Uncle Mu. Only you, because of your face, gave him great comfort. It is precisely because your face is similar to Auntie Jiang's that he would pour his longing for Auntie Jiang onto you. The so-called love, to put it bluntly, you are just a substitute. Understand? Auntie Jiang and I look alike? Song Enya touched her face in disbelief. She was obviously confused by Song Yunshi's words. Seeing her confused look, Song Yunshi was a little surprised. Didn't Uncle Mu mention it to you? He had heard about this from Jiang Qimeng. Song Enya's face was very similar to Jiang Yishan's. When Jiang Yishan passed away, Mu Yaja locked himself in his room and did not come out. He did not eat or drink. In the Mu family, Mu Yaja's affection for his mother was deeper than anyone else's. The death of his beloved family member was a heavy blow to him. At that time, Jiang Qimeng brought Song Enya to the Mu family to attend Jiang Yishan's funeral and mourn. That was the first time he saw little Enya. At that time, Mu Yaja, who was still young, stared at her for a long time. His face was expressionless as tears streamed down his face. He hugged her tightly in his arms. The more he missed Jiang Yishan, the more he doted on Song Enya. Song Enya was undoubtedly Mu Yaja's sustenance. He thought that Song Enya knew about this. Chapter 657. Song Yunshi sighed helplessly. That's because Auntie is the deepest pain in his heart. That's why he rarely mentions her. Song Enya was silent for a while before she suddenly asked, "Brother, do you have Auntie's photo? What do you want to do?" "I'm curious. I've never seen Auntie's face before. After hearing what you said, I also want to see how similar I look to her," Song Enya said matter-of-factly. Song Yunshi pulled out a photo from the album. It was the only photo of the sisters, Jiang Qimeng and Jiang Yishan. Song Enya took a look. Indeed, her facial features were very similar to Jiang Yishan's. If others saw it, they would only think that she was Jiang Yishan's daughter. She stared at the photo in a daze. So, the reason Brother Mu doted on her so much was because she had a face similar to Auntie's? Song Enya stared at the photo and could not help caressing her cheek. The corners of her lips curled into a sly, deep arc. She looked like Auntie Jiang. Did that mean that at least Brother Mu wouldn't hate her? Did that mean that she still had a chance? That Yun Shishir was nothing. Even if Brother Mu doted on her, it was at most a whim. Who knew, she might be smug now and abandon him not long after. However, Brother Mu would not abandon her. She loved him. Even if it was because of ethics, even if she did not have a proper status, she did not care at all. Her face was the bargaining chip that she held tightly in her hands. She must snatch Brother Mu back from that woman. Song Enya pursed her lips tightly. She did not know that she had such a unique advantage in the past. So what if she was a substitute? So what if she was just a part of Brother Mu? No matter what identity or method she used, as long as she could stay by the side of the man she loved, she would endure any grievances and use any means. Song Yunshi did not know what Song Enya was thinking in her heart at this moment. She only lifted a corner of her skirt and looked at the bloody gauze with extreme heartache. "What's going on with your wound?" Song Enya returned to her senses and looked at Song Yunshi's worried and heartbroken expression. She immediately pretended to be aggrieved and complained, "Brother, someone bullied me." Song Yunshi was furious. "Who bullied you?" "Yun Shishir. This is the woman who hit me." "Hit you?" Song Yunshi was so shocked that she stood up all of a sudden. Her handsome eyes were filled with anger. "Who is Yun Shishir? Where did this woman get the guts to bully you?" Woo, sobbing, Song Enya recounted what had happened that night. This time, Song Yunshi was completely infuriated. Normally, he couldn't even bear to lay a finger on his precious little sister. But now, she had been bullied outside and was even injured all over. How could he bear it? Song Yunxi clenched her fists and gritted her teeth in anger. That woman is called Yunshishir, right? Brother, don't be angry. She seems to be Brother Mu's woman. Although she's quite arrogant, Brother Mu dotes on her, so she definitely has nothing to fear. You'd better not stand up for me. What if you offend Brother Mu? She's just a woman. Although the Mu family is powerful and influential, they still have to give the Song family some face in the capital. I don't believe that he'll offend the Song family for a despicable woman. Enya, don't be sad. I'll stand up for you. Chapter 658. The night was getting darker. Mu Yaja sent Yunshishir home. Along the way, Yunshishir was still immersed in the surprise just now and couldn't come back to her senses. Before this, Mu Yaja took her in a helicopter and flew around the island. This was her first time in a helicopter. It was very novel and interesting. Looking down at the night scene of the island from high up in the sky, the entire island was decorated with starlight. The colorful lights reflected on the surface of the lake, dyeing the surface of the lake into a beautiful color. At a glance, it was so beautiful that it was suffocating. Even though she was a little nervous when she boarded the helicopter for the first time, when she looked down at Hushin Island, she was deeply impressed by the beautiful scenery. No wonder it was said that all girls dreamed of going on a date with the man they loved in a Bali restaurant. No matter how big or small, it was so romantic that it made people feel as if they had entered a fantasy world. The night wind blew, and Hushin Island seemed to be surrounded by a sea of stars. However, the surprise was far more than she had imagined. When she walked down from the helicopter, under the cluster of fireworks, more than 10,000 roses almost covered the ground. She couldn't help but have the illusion that she was in a sea of flowers. In the past, when she was still in school, she often saw couples sending roses to each other. 1, 2, and even some boys sent a car full of roses to make the girls happy. At that time, she thought that sending roses was really tacky. Was there no other way to express romance? However, when she looked at the roses in front of her, which were like a carpet of flowers, against the gorgeous fireworks, reflecting the dreamy colors, she was so surprised that she was suffocating. It turned out that a sea of roses was so beautiful. It was so beautiful that she couldn't come back to her senses for a long time. Tonight's date had more or less satisfied all of her desires for a date. Mu Yaja glanced at Yunshishir sitting in the passenger seat, who was holding her heart and lost in thought. He couldn't help but laugh. What are you thinking about? Mu Yaja, do you know? I originally thought that sending roses was tasteless. Yunshishir turned to look at him, her eyes full of surprise. But tonight, I understand why girls like roses. Not only was he surprised, but he was also touched. She was so touched that she wanted to cry. It was a kind of touched feeling of being doted on. It turned out that girls all yearned for romance. Even in the past, he felt that giving a woman roses was very unromantic. But if it was someone she liked, that would be great. He had wanted her to stay by his side for one more night, but Yunshishir insisted on going home to accompany Yu. Previously, she had told Yu that she had to film a few scenes overnight and would not be able to return home for a few nights. Yu's disappointed expression made her heart ache. Therefore, she wanted to hurry home and accompany him. The car stopped at the entrance of the villa. Yunshishir gets out of the car and sees that the light in the study is still on. His heart skipped a beat. She subconsciously raised her hand to look at her watch. It was already past 1 in the morning. What was this child doing? Why aren't you asleep yet? Mu Yaja also got out of the car. When he saw that the light in the study was still on, he was stunned. The two of them looked at each other. In the study, Yun Tianyu sat in front of the computer with a frown and a serious expression. His fingers flew across the keyboard from time to time as he typed a series of instructions in the program window. On the screen, in the black interface, lines of code instructions were constantly being refreshed. Chapter 659. He stared at the screen expressionlessly. He was so engrossed that he did not hear the sound of the study room's door opening despite his usually sharp senses. There was a suffocating atmosphere in the study room. Yu stared intently at the screen as she browsed through the data on it. Her pinkish but tense face was filled with killing intent, and her eyes were as cold as ice. However, after a short while, the data on the screen suddenly turned red. Yu's pinkish lips pursed slightly. As if victory was already in her grasp, her fingers danced on the keyboard as she typed continuously. Tap, 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 tap. The tapping sound of the mechanical keyboard did not seem to stop. Other than that, there was only dead silence. He held his breath as his eyes shone like torches. A hint of mockery flashed across his eyes. Shortly after, the data seemed to have collapsed and turned into a garbled mess. Shortly after, the screen flashed with the image of the Pentagon's home defense system collapsing. The Hurricane Group's logo appeared on the home page. The boy's tense expression faded as an elegant smile appeared on his face. "Humph, trying to fight with me? You're overestimating yourself." He closed the interface and pushed the keyboard away. He slowly picked up the cup of Ceylon black tea beside him and elegantly took a sip. At the bottom right corner of the window, Li Hanlon's video conference window kept flashing. He clicked on it, and the computer screen switched to a video. Li Hanlon's figure was exposed before the camera, and his face was filled with amazement. "Oh, my God! Yu, do you have to be so fierce? The Pentagon's defense system is broken just like that." He was already dumbfounded when he witnessed the collapse of the Pentagon's heavy defense net. This child's ability was beyond his expectations. The Pentagon's defense system was very strict. However, in the hands of this boy, the system was completely destroyed in just a few minutes. Did he have to be so fierce? Did he have to be so heaven-defying? How could this child have such terrifying lethality? Li Hanlon was so shocked that he could not speak. "Ha!" Tianyu sneered, his eyes filled with disdain and contempt. "To me, the Pentagon's so-called defense system exists in name only. How dare they confiscate his cargo ship? Since when did the Pentagon dare to hack into his system? Mobilizing the port to block his route and detain his cargo ships? This was undoubtedly an act of twisting a tiger's whiskers. In the history of the American government, presidents would always do a few stupid things when they were in power. These newly appointed government officials actually dared to provoke him? Good, very good. Since they didn't know the rules, he didn't mind teaching them a lesson. This transaction was extremely important to him. Although the North American market was not under his jurisdiction, this sea route was under his control. How dare they block his path? Courting death. Since they dared to do such a thing, they couldn't blame him for being ruthless. Now that he had breached the defensive net, the Pentagon had suffered a great loss. It would probably take some time for them to recover. When Li Hanlon heard his arrogant tone, he was even more impressed. He even began to wonder if this child had a genetic mutation. Comparing oneself to others was indeed infuriating. He couldn't even type the Wubi input method smoothly. However, this child was already able to break through the Pentagon's defense net in a short period of time. Chapter 660. Tianyu tapped his fingertips on the table. Just as he was deep in thought, he suddenly felt that something was amiss. On the screen, Li Hanlon suddenly stopped talking. His eyes were fixed on something behind him. Tianyu was a little creeped out by his gaze. "Where are you looking?" "Mommy." Li Hanlon opened his mouth in a daze. "Mommy?" Feeling suspicious, Tianyu followed his line of sight. Behind him, Shishir stood rooted to the ground with a look of bewilderment. Wuxia who was standing beside her, had an unfathomable look on his face. "Mommy!" Yu was instantly scared out of his wits by the ghostly appearance of the two people. His heart almost stopped beating at that moment. He stood up straight from the leather chair in shock and subconsciously reached out to turn off the computer screen. His guilty conscience action made the expression on Yunshirshi's face even weirder. Seeing this, Mu Yaja's smile gradually deepened. He was scared witless by Yunshirshi's doubtful gaze. "Mommy, why did she come back at this time? Did she not say that she would be staying with the production team for a period of time and could not return home?" He counted the days. She should be back the day after tomorrow at the earliest. Why was she now? Also, when did the two of them enter his study room? Like ghosts, they appeared behind him without a sound and did not say a word. Yu patted his chest. He was scared to death. Did they have to be so scary? It was scary enough to scare someone to death, all right? He did not know when they came in and how much of his words they had heard. Yu glanced at Mu Yaja again and felt even more bewildered. Why was he here, too? "Mommy, why are you back at this time?" Yu changed from her kingly aura to that of an adorable little fairy. She reached out and tugged at Yunshirshi's sleeve. Her tone was coquettish. Yunshirsher stared at the changes in his expression. Suddenly, she asked in confusion, "Darling, what were you doing just now?" Yu looked nervous and played dumb. I didn't do anything." He glanced at Mu Yaja warily. However, he had an "I know what you're doing" expression on his face. His heart trembled. Mommy didn't know much about things on a deeper level, so she naturally couldn't understand what he was doing just now. But Mu Yaja was different. Even if he didn't understand, he should at least understand some of what he said. Little Munchkin was a little worried. The situation just now was so intense that he could not spare any energy to pay attention to the things around him. Therefore, he did not notice when they opened the door and entered the study. She didn't even notice the sound of footsteps. Really? Yunshirsher saw that he looked extremely guilty and was a little suspicious. "But I think I heard you say something about courting death." Yu was her gentle little god, her adorable little angel. How could he possibly say such cruel words? Yu's brain suddenly stopped working. After thinking carefully, he immediately explained, "No. Mommy, don't think too much. Yu was playing a game." "What game?" Red alert. Yu explained, "It's a strategy game." "Then why did you say the Pentagon? This is how the game is played. You can win if you occupy the Pentagon." Yu explained with a face full of cold sweat. She kept looking at Mu Yaja's expression. Chapter 661. The man's light gaze landed on him. Obviously, he understood what he was doing just now. This son of his was more impressive than he had imagined. He could actually break through the Pentagon security system effortlessly. The student had surpassed the master. The father and son exchanged a look, each keeping a secret from the other. Yunshirsher was skeptical. "Really? It's true. Mommy, Yu was really playing a game." Yun Tianyu pursed his lips aggrievedly. His innocent and naive eyes were like those of a Bambi fawn as he launched a gentle attack on her. Yunshirsher was finally defeated, but she could not help reprimanding him. "You should pay attention to the time when playing a game. It's already so late, didn't I tell you to go to bed on time every day? Mommy isn't home, so why are you fooling around?" Yu heaved a sigh of relief when he heard this. It seemed that his mommy believed him. Immediately, a pitiful expression appeared on his face. "I'm sorry, Mommy, I was wrong. I didn't do it on purpose, it's just that this round took longer than usual. Yu won't do it again. There won't be a next time." Yunshirsher reprimanded him. Yu immediately nodded his head and pleaded, "Mommy, Yu is really hungry. Mommy will cook some noodles for Yu, okay?" With that, He pitifully tugged at the corner of her clothes and acted coquettishly. I really don't know what to do with you. Yunshirshi's heart softened. I'll cook some noodles for you. Quickly tidy up the study room and go to bed after eating. Okay. Yun Tianyu immediately cheered and clapped his hands in joy. Yunshirshir helplessly reached out to pat his head and left the study room to cook noodles. The father and son were left standing in the study room, facing each other. The gentleness and cuteness on Yuntianyo's face instantly faded as he looked coldly at Muyaja. With an unfriendly look, he questioned, Muyaja, why are you here? Muyaja looked down at him and couldn't help but say, ungrateful brat. Yun Tianyu frowned, not understanding what he was talking about. Muyaja smiled wickedly and squatted down to look him in the eye. When you lied to your mommy just now, I was kind enough not to expose you. Is this how you treat me the moment your mommy left? Humph. I'm not lying. I'm just playing a game. Little Munchkin shrugged innocently. Breaching the Pentagon's security program was indeed like a simple and low-level game to him. It was not even challenging at all. He wasn't lying, and he never lied to his mommy. He was a good boy. Yun Tianyu had a clear conscience. Yes. I'm playing a game. He nodded earnestly. It was just that this game was beyond the average adult hacker's capability. Breaching the Pentagon in minutes, I'm really impressed by you. Muyaja squinted at him. You play with firearms? Yun Tianyo's face darkened. This man was more capable than he had imagined, he could actually understand it. Are you in charge of North America and East Asia's air routes? Yun Tianyu was completely speechless. His daddy was not someone to be trifled with either. Muyaja sighed helplessly. Your mommy is stupid and can't understand these things, but I can. My mommy isn't stupid. Yun Tianyu glared at him and retorted with a snort, you're not allowed to speak ill of my mommy. Okay. Chapter 662. Then, why don't you call me daddy? Muyaja looked at him, his lips curling into a playful smile. Yun Tianyo's gaze changed and his face turned cold. You want me to call you daddy? Yu Yu's eyes were full of contempt and disdain. You want me to call you daddy? Dream on. Yu Yu proudly crossed his arms and raised his head with a pout. His eyes were full of childishness. This man was dreaming. He wanted him to call him daddy. This person was not even married yet, so how could he change it? Was that even possible? Muyaja cocked a brow and nodded. Stubborn fellow. Are you really not going to call me that? Dream on. These 3 words were a merciless rebuke. Yun Tianyu did not give him any face and coldly tugged at the corner of his lips. Muyaja shook his head helplessly, looking troubled. Then. I can only report your situation to your mommy. Situation? What situation? Yun Tianyu squinted his eyes warily and sized him up. His brows furrowed in confusion. What do you mean by that? Muyaja patiently guided him. Little thing, guess what will happen if your mommy finds out that you're the boss of Liji Holdings? Yun Tianyo's good-looking brows furrowed slightly as he thought about it seriously. Suddenly, he realized something and coldly glanced at him from the corner of his eyes. He snorted and questioned, Are you threatening me? Yes. Muyaja calmly nodded and admitted it. The corner of Yun Tianyo's eyes twitched violently as he mocked, Muyaja, can you be any more shameless? A certain man nodded seriously and shamelessly. Yes, I dare. Do you want to try? Yun Tianyu was stunned. This man was really shameless. He was more shameless than he thought. Yu Yu did not take his threat seriously and only sneered. Muyaja, do you think you can threaten me with this? Regarding my identity, I'll come clean with my mommy sooner or later. It's just a matter of time, you can't threaten me. Oh? Is that so? Mu Yaja glanced at him from the corner of his eyes and dragged out his last word. Hearing this, the little lad looked up and saw a flash of cunning in the man's eyes. His heart shuddered involuntarily. He actually felt a little guilty because of the smile in his eyes. Mu Yaja's eyes and his handsome face slowly inched closer to the little lad's eyes. With a sinister smile, his thin lips suddenly spouted these words, "You guess. If your mommy. If you know, what if she knows that you dabble in firearms, hacking, smuggling, and oil?" Every word made Yun Tianyu shudder with fear and trepidation. Her watery eyes couldn't help but widen as she stared at him in disbelief. The sinister and playful smile on Mu Yaja's face was glaring in his eyes at this moment. Yu was completely speechless. This man, how much dirt did he have on him? How did he find out? Yu eyed him suspiciously. He was wary and suspicious. He clearly hid his identity very well. How did this man find out about his identity? You want to ask me how I found out? Mu Yaja seemed to have seen through his thoughts. Yun Tianyu pursed his lips tightly and did not say a word. Mu Yaja reached out and pinched his chubby cheeks with interest. Then, with a deep smile, he deliberately provoked him. "I'm not telling you." Yun Tianyu ground his teeth. Chapter 663. What a pervert. Yun Tianyu was infuriated by his repulsive look, but he could do nothing about it. Mu Yaja rubbed his chin and asked curiously, "When did you start playing with firearms? Is there a need for me to tell you? It should be last May when you officially joined Hurricane Group, right?" Mu Yaja blinked. Yun Tianyu was stunned again. This man was truly a pervert. He clearly knew everything, yet he still asked him. "I just want to see if you're honest with Daddy." Mu Yaja saw through his thoughts again and explained. Yun Tianyu's face was stiff and distorted. Did he have the ability to read minds or what? Could he tell what he was thinking with just one look? Yun Tianyu stared at his eyes suspiciously, trying to find some strange secret on his face. Mu Yaja lazily said, "Stop looking, I don't know how to read minds." Yu's lips twitched. *CK. No, I can't get angry, and I can't swear. If Mommy comes in and sees me freaking out, I'll be done for. Be a gentleman. Be elegant. Be a gentleman. Be elegant. Yu repeatedly reminded himself. Finally, he calmed down and smiled elegantly. "Mu Yaja, you know a lot." "Yes. I also know that you're the head of East Asia's firearms market." Yun Tianyu involuntarily took a step back to maintain a safe distance from him. He originally thought that Mu Yaja did not know his identity. Only now did he realize that he had underestimated this man. Black-bellied, the ultimate black-bellied. Poor Yu. If this man was really as simple as he thought, then who did he inherit his black-bellied genes from? His son was not simple, so his father was naturally not a simple character either. Mu Yaja saw his guarded expression and smiled. "I also know that you're the designer of Hurricane Group's arsenal. Liji Holdings' machine research technology can be used to manufacture missiles." Yun Tianyu could no longer hold it in. "Where did you find out about this?" "Yes, I've been to your study room." Mu Yaja smiled evilly. "There are a lot of design drawings on your computer. In addition, there's also the research technology for quantum computers." Yun Tianyu's face drained of color. "You've cracked my computer?" "Yes," Mu Yaja gave a concise answer. That day, before flying to England and before Yun Shirsha returned home, he browsed through Yun Tianyu's study room. There were many design drawings hidden under the desk. Initially, he had thought that these drawings were for Liji Holdings' machines and technologies. However, upon closer inspection, he was shocked to discover that these technologies could also be used in the field of missiles. Turning on the computer, he broke through the 3 layers of defense that little Munchkin had set up. However, he couldn't break through the 4th layer no matter what he tried. He guessed that this system probably had 9 layers of protection, but with his ability, he could only break through 3 layers at most. But there was one thing he wouldn't say out loud. Otherwise, it will be embarrassing. It's a little embarrassing that I can't crack the defense system set by my son. Yun Tianyu looked at him deeply and thought that he had cracked his 9 layers of defense. He could not help but look at the man in front of him in a new light. You actually went through my confidential files.